This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Kid Naruto Discovered Alien Technology. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Following that regrettable event, a clan law was established that prohibited Uchiha ninjas from consciously attempting to obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan. When a mist ninja killed his wife while they were on a mission, the last person to use Mangekyo Sharingan was a Jonin who was a few years younger than Mozu. 3 years after obtaining his Mangekyo Sharingan, the Jonin died, ending his brief life. Even though the Mangekyo Sharingan was the highest level, its immense power severely damaged the user's body and eyesight, eventually killing and blinding them. Within a few years, those who were less able to withstand the strain of the strong eyes perished. Only one person out of the 18 Mangekyo Sharingan users had ever managed to prevent the harm that such a Sharingan would cause to oneself. Every Mangekyo Sharingan user in the clan had been depicted in a portrait, and the young man in front of him bore a striking resemblance to the notorious Madara Uchiha. Mozu gasped, his legs weak from coming into contact with the Uchiha clan's most heinous murderer and criminal. A part of Mozu questioned how the man who appeared to be 100 years old managed to stay young, or if this youth was a Madara offspring. Madara acknowledged Mozu's words with a thin smile, confirming that the young man was, in fact, Madara. Mozu Uchiha. Mozu saw the faces of several other captured Uchiha members standing in the hallway, gazing reverently at Madara through the door's opening. I have come to free all of you. All of you Uchihas, who had been abandoned by both their clan and village. Would you like to join me? Mozu swallowed, but his throat became suddenly dry. For what purpose? Madara laughed and said, why? How would you like to crush the Uchiha clan and then Konoha after that? For a brief moment, Mozu staggered backward in disbelief, but then a sinister smile appeared on his face. Konoha had already labeled him a criminal, and his clan had virtually deserted him. At worst, he would likely be put to death within a week, and in the best case, his chakra coils would be destroyed and thrown into prison. He and all the other members of the Uchiha who had been apprehended would not be able to return. Mozu bowed before Madara's feet and said, I will join you. Madara-sama, what do you wish me to do? Madara threw him a parchment with a storage seal and said, first, here are some weapons. I believe you prefer long swords. I've contained one dipped in powerful poison inside the storage seal. You can use it in your battles. Naruto jumped out of bed in shock as he heard a loud, shrill voice in his head. As he cleared his mind of the mental cacophony, Naruto groped in the dark for the light switch and exclaimed, what the hell are you doing, Sika? The village is under attack. One individual, recorded as calling himself Madara Uchiha, had slipped into the Anbu cells and freed the captured Uchihas. They are on their way to the Uchiha clan to destroy it as an act of vengeance. Their plan also include destroying the village should their attack on the Uchiha clan prove successful. Sika said glumly. The clone assigned to the Anbu headquarters tried to enter the building to help, but was destroyed when a strange attack caused the whole Anbu tower to collapse in on itself. I've ordered the clones in areas closest to the Anbu tower to make their way towards it at once while sending an order to all the research clones in the forest to make their way to the Uchiha clan compound. The clone stationed near the Hokage's residence is currently attempting to infiltrate the Sarutobi compound in order to warn the Hokage of the dire threat to the village. As he attempted to clear his clouded mind, Naruto questioned, wait, who is Madara Uchiha in the first place? I don't recall any mention of his name while the clones were drafting out the reports on the Uchiha clan for the Hokage. As Sika discovered the pertinent data from its databank, it told Naruto, Madara Uchiha was a powerful Uchiha who was branded an S-rank criminal ninja by Konoha many years ago. Of particular note, he had fought with the first Hokage for control of the village when Konoha was first formed. He should be hundreds of years old by this time. However, the last transmission scan from the Anbu clone revealed that the Madara that had freed the captured Uchihas was in the body of a young man. Whatever the case, he is a very serious threat. He possessed an advanced version of the Sharingan, of which the genetic structure has been recorded for further reference. He also possessed implanted right limbs containing an 89% genetical match to your wood-release bloodline, but there is a high level of abnormality with the cellular structure of those limbs. The Sika with the Anbu clone also noted an unknown dojutsu attack from Madara which shortly destroyed the Anbu tower and the clone with it. Naruto exclaimed, he has the wood-release bloodline? Sika explained, his right limbs possessed the wood-release bloodline. The limbs seemed to be perfectly grafted to his body, and from what I can tell, the wood-release bloodline his limbs possessed should allow him some degree of the bloodline. Added to Madara's historical recorded strength, I doubt the clones have ordered to the Uchiha clan would be enough to stop him. Realizing what Sika meant, Naruto grimly remarked. I'll need to go down personally. What are my chances of winning? Madara was labeled an S-rank ninja decades ago. According to history records, even the first Hokage had difficulties countering his powers during battle. Madara was also able to control the tailed beasts with his advanced Sharingan. By exponential deduction, his powers should have increased by then. At your current level of strength and experience, I would say that you might probably have a 5% chance of winning against him, if you include Kyuubi's limitless chakra into the equation. Sika said. However, it is very likely he would be able to disable you very swiftly. You should avoid all close combat, and instead focus on mid to long range attacks. Your main objective is to slow him down instead of winning, at least until the Hokage can arrive with help. With a pale face as he processed Sika's words, Naruto hurriedly changed into a shirt and pants and said, "Alright. I need to buy more time till help arrives. Got it. Let's just hope I don't end up dead on my first real battle." Sasuke woke up cold sweating from the sounds of fighting and screaming. He heard the sounds of glass breaking and metal clanging against metal as he stumbled out of his blankets and walked hesitantly down the stairs. He suddenly wished that yesterday night had not been the night his father had sent Itachi away from the clan. He froze at what he saw as he reached down the stairs. His father was fighting off two members of the Uchiha clan directly in front of him. He identified one of the attackers as a member of the Uchiha Council who was taken prisoner last night. At his side, a sneering voice said, "Fugaku's brat." Frightened, Sasuke turned and retreated when he noticed Mozu, another captured member of the Uchiha Council, standing next to him with a long sword in his hands. Die. Sasuke whimpered and tried to move aside, but his shock caused his legs to tangle, and he fell. As he saw Mozu stab him with the sword, he let out an uncontrollable cry. A warm figure landed on him just as he was ready to close his eyes to the inevitable. Sasuke noticed his mother bending over his body in protective posture, her soft face gazing down at him. He witnessed her gasping in agony as the long sword sliced through her abdomen, causing blood to flow from her mouth. Makoto fell heavily onto Sasuke, whispering, "Run. Run, Sasuke, get Itachi." As his mother's eyes glazed over and her head lay on his stomach, motionless and breathing, Sasuke felt his tears streaming down his cheeks. Sasuke clutched his mother's head to his chest and screamed, "Mother, mother, no." Mozu stood in front of them and twisted his sword out of Makoto's stomach, smiling with satisfaction. Mozu slashed down at Sasuke with his sword and declared, "Now it's your turn. Don't worry, the sword's been laced with poison, you'll die quickly." With tears in his eyes, Sasuke sat firmly in his place, glaring at Mozu while protectively bending over his mother's body. He would not flee. Instead, he would die honorably, as the son of the head of the Uchiha clan would. As the sword slashed down toward him, Sasuke instinctively closed his eyes and whispered, "Mother, I am coming." 15 minutes prior to the Anbu Tower attack. As he sat down for a lengthy wait, N14, the Naruto clone tasked with guarding the Uchiha clan compound, sighed. He was certain that the three other Naruto clones, N11, N12, and N13, who were positioned on the opposite side of the clan compound walls, were carrying out the same action. The atmosphere in the Uchiha clan was calmed down after last night's scare, when the majority of their council members were taken into custody for treason against the village. Despite numerous arguments between young, attractive people, none of the Uchiha were seriously hurt. Many of them had spent the majority of the day up talking about the clan's future. N14 was using Sika's mental link to browse cosmology materials when a high-pitched mental transmission came through. Passing transmission from S4. Anbu Tower is attacked, N4 is going in. The mental voice ended abruptly, and N14 blinked like an owl. N14 looked at his Sika in disbelief and asked, "What the hell is that?" "That is a direct transmission from S4, the Sika of the clone assigned to keep watch over the Anbu Tower." S14 patiently responded, attempting to connect back to S4 but failed. There might be a 90% chance that N4 and S4 had been destroyed by an attack. Contact Boss's Sika at once. If N4 and S4 are destroyed, S4's gathered data should have been passed on to Boss's Sika by now, urgently requested N14. As it played the message, S4 stated coolly, Boss's Sika had already mass sent a priority 1 message to all Sikas. Transmitting now. Anbu Tower has been destroyed by one Madara Uchiha, S-rank criminal of Konoha. He had freed the traitor Uchihas and they are on their way to destroy the Uchiha clan. All research clones, N11, N12, N13, N14 and those in the area are to proceed to the clan compound at once to stall the attack. Clones in the business district and western part of Konoha, proceed to the Anbu Tower at once to look for survivors. As Boss's Sika went on to describe Madara Uchiha's background and skills, N14 blinked. Which was regrettably quite brief. There were no hard copy records of what the clones were about to expect, and no one had seen the man in decades. Even the recorded details were hazy, but all that was known was that Madara Uchiha had successfully subdued the Kyuubi during the fabled conflict with the first Hokage at the Valley of the End. Interrupting transmission. Picking up the arrival of a large group of Uchiha bearing weapons at the eastern side of the Uchiha clan. N11 is already engaging in battle. The odds are N11 has been destroyed. N12 and N13 are sending message saying that they are on the way over to meet the invading force. S14 noted that N14 was becoming nervous. N14 exclaimed in surprise, N11 has been destroyed so fast? Yes. The one identified as Madara Uchiha had used some space warping attack that consumed N11 after he had attempted to stop the invasion force with a wood release wall. Madara Uchiha seemed particularly agitated when N11 had revealed his wood release ability. S14 revealed as it continued to analyze. It is quite surprising that a normal human bears an ability to warp space in that fashion. It bears a 37% similarity to the warp space fields produced by Federation starships to travel at the speed of light. N14's hands swiftly flashed into the body flicker technique's hand signs, and his mouth tightened grimly. That would be interesting information in a time of peace, but we're under an attack now. Analyze all data you have on the space warping attack. N14 gave a grim look. I want a way to prevent the same thing from happening to the rest of the clones. As N14 disappeared in a whirlpool of air, S14 declared, already analyzing. Both of them were moving quickly through the distance to confront the Madara forces directly. As he and his group waited in the forest near the southern walls of the Uchiha clan compound, Kakashi yawned wearily behind his face mask. After the Uchiha clan's traitorous members were captured, the Hokage left two 5-man teams to guard them, and he was the leader of Team Eagle. The Hokage had designated the two teams as a lookout to ensure they were available to alert the Hokage to any early indications of trouble because he was afraid that some irascible Uchihas might rebel against Konoha following last night's events. Leaning back against the tree, Kakashi could see a large portion of the southern side of the Uchiha clan compound from the top of the enormous tree. When night falls and morning arrives in a few more hours, a new team will be coming in to take over his team's responsibilities. When he got home, he could already picture himself soaking in a hot bath. In this chilly evening, it was undoubtedly something to anticipate. Kakashi tensed as he noticed a flash of red in the distance. He swiftly took out his spyglass and looked through it, raising it to his right eye. Houses on the eastern side of the compound were on fire, and Kakashi's lips tightened grimly as he saw them. The spyglass magnifies the distant objects. A huge circular hole was blasted in the middle of a large wooden wall that appeared to have taken root at an intersection of the compound roads. There was fighting on the compound's streets as well, but Kakashi was unable to identify any of the attackers due to the distance. Kakashi yelled into his ear microphone as he leapt down the tall tree, shocking his teammates who were sleeping below. Eagle to Hawk. We've got trouble. He kept talking into the microphone in the hopes that his transmission would be picked up by the second Konoha Look.Out team. As he quietly alerted his teammates to the disruption, his hands were already making a number of hand signals. Something's going down at the eastern Uchiha compound. Proceed there at once. Using the body flicker technique, Kakashi signaled to his teammates as they all disappeared from their lookout post without waiting for a response from the second team, which was stationed on the opposite side of the Uchiha compound. Kakashi hoped he was not too late to halt whatever was going on in the clan as they made their way swiftly and quietly to the Uchiha clan compound. Sarutobi felt a presence in his room and abruptly woke up. Pretending to be asleep, he snagged his hand beneath his pillow and closed it around a kunai as he attempted to locate the attacker. Sarutobi detected a presence close to his room's door using his chakra senses. Without a doubt, it was not of any of the Anbus defending his home or any of his relatives. He quickly stood up and was ready to hurl his kunai at the figure when his room's light was turned on. Sarutobi blinked at the unexpected burst of light and saw a young man with brown hair standing by his room's doorway. The young man was wearing a worried expression, and Sarutobi was frozen in place by the words that followed. With an urgent gaze on Sarutobi, the young man declared, I am the Eye. The Anbu Tower has been destroyed by Uchiha Madara, who had gathered the Uchiha prisoners and is leading all of them to first destroy the Uchiha clan, followed by Konoha. Sarutobi blinked in surprise as he said, What? But Uchiha Madara was supposed to be dead long ago. He was definitely alive enough to free the prisoners and destroy the Anbu Tower. The Eye replied with conviction. The original have sent clones to search the rubbles of the Anbu Tower to save those who are still alive. As we speak, Another group of clones are headed towards the Uchiha clan to delay Madara and his men. The original is on his way personally to the Uchiha clan to buy more time for you to marshal your forces. The original? A bewildered Sarutobi inquired. The Eye quickly replied, yes, the original. You need to get your forces and hurry to the Uchiha compound. With Madara's abilities, the best we might be able to do is to buy you some time. You need to hurry. Poofing into smoke was the young man who had gone by the name The Eye. Sarutobi recognized that the messenger was a shadow clone and that the original he was referring to was Konoha's own Eye. It took an additional minute for the clone's entire message to fully register. The news that one of Konoha's most formidable adversaries had returned would have caused a weaker man to crumble, but Sarutobi was never your typical man. As the third Hokage, he would be damned if Madara destroyed Konoha and the Uchiha clan while he was in charge. Sarutobi hurried to his drawer, took out a radio set, and rapidly adjusted the frequency to the radio signal of the two teams that were positioned to monitor the Uchiha clan compound. He had never anticipated having to use those two teams so quickly. He had intended to keep them there for an additional 2 weeks to make sure the Uchiha clan wouldn't take any incorrect actions against Konoha following the arrest of their traitorous members. Team Eagle and Hawk, Red Alert, Red Alert. Hokage Code, 8749CGH. S. Rank Missing Nin Madara Uchiha is leading the Uchiha turncoats to destroy Uchiha clan. Anbu Tower has been destroyed. Orders are to sound the alarm, prepare the clan for battle, and get as many civilians off the clan compound as possible. Apply delaying tactics. I repeat, apply delaying tactics. Madara Uchiha is above the power levels of all of you. Wait for help to arrive, do you copy? Sarutobi screamed violently into the radio headset, of numbness in his stomach. Before Shibi Aburame's voice could be heard over the radio, there was a brief period of static silence. Over the radio speakers, Shibi's voice boomed harshly, Team Hawk receives your orders, we have already spotted the enemy forces, engaging them in battle. Team Eagle is up against a powerful Uchiha we have never seen before and most of the members are severely injured. I presume that is Madara Uchiha. But the battle isn't going well, we need help soon, Hokage-sama. With a tinge of steel in his voice, Sarutobi responded, I understand, delay the enemies as much as you can. Help is coming soon. Shibi's message verified that the information supplied by the Eye was accurate. He quickly started to link to another radio signal after cutting off the radio connection. Konoha Militia. Attention, this is the Hokage, security code, A7384B73. Red Alert, Red Alert. Itachi groaned in agony as the crushing weight on his body began to lessen. In his pain-stricken state, he felt someone tugging at him and then being carried before being placed on rocky terrain. A cooling energy flowed through his body as someone started to carefully raise his hands. He sensed his body starting to heal, and the pain subsided. 5 more minutes passed before Itachi mustered the strength to open his eyes and look straight at a young boy with red hair whose hands were glowing with green healing energy that was still spreading throughout his body. As he attempted to push Itachi down, the boy said, You shouldn't move. I can only heal your flesh wounds, and stop your bleeding. There's nothing I can do about any internal injuries that you've suffered. The medic ninjas from the hospital has been notified. You need to lie still until they had arrived. What happened? Itachi questioned angrily, gasping for air as he saw the towering rock debris that had once been the Anbu Tower to his left. Approximately 10 to 20 young people from various backgrounds were excavating the bodies of what he recognized as fellow Anbus from the debris using what appeared to be a variety of wood release techniques. 5 or 6 other young people were tending to the excavated people close to him. On the nearby pavement, everyone who had been dug out was laid out in tidy rows. When Itachi forced himself to stand, the boy stumbled back and insisted, You need to rest. Taking the boy by the collar, Itachi yelled, I am the Anbu captain, tell me what happened, and spoke straight into the boy's face, now. The boy looked at him glumly, then shrugged helplessly. The boy looked at Itachi grimly and said, Madara Uchiha came, rescued the Uchiha prisoners and leveled the Anbu Tower. They're on their way to the Uchiha clan, to destroy it. The Hokage has already been informed. Itachi didn't bother to listen to the boy's words again. He recognized the name Madara from the clan's past as one of the more ruthless Uchiha criminals, and he knew that his clan was in danger. The boy who healed him said, You can't go, as his hands formed into the body flicker technique. After leaving, Itachi would realize that the only person in Konoha known to have used the wood release gene was a young person protected by Anbu. Later on, he would question where all the young people who were using wood release techniques to save the trapped Anbus had come from. The time now as he waited for his life to end, Sasuke closed his eyes and felt his heart pounding fiercely in his shivering body. As the traitor Mozu slashed down at him with his blade, he could feel the wind, the sharp hum of a cutting blade, and his father's frantic cries. The ground shook and sweat collected around Sasuke's head as Mozu let out an alarmed cry. A giant root that had grown from the wooden planks in front of him forced Mozu's blade to a halt as Sasuke snapped his eyes open and faced the enormous root. The older man dropped his blade and jumped backwards as a vine like root protruded from the giant root and pierced towards Mozu with uncanny accuracy. Mozu was staring horrifiedly at something behind Sasuke. The words, "would release user," were the only sound he made. Sasuke rigidly turned his head and saw a blonde-haired man standing close to the doorway, staring at Mozu narrowly. Suddenly, roots were growing everywhere as the blonde man's hands flashed into a series of hand seals. One Uchiha attacker who was battling his father was successfully incapacitated. Fugaku Uchiha used the occasion to murder the man. Mozu and Uchiha, the other traitor, exchanged glances as they realized the tide of battle had shifted. The fight ended abruptly when they both made a series of hand seals and vanished into swirls of wind and an unspoken agreement. After a brief period of silence during which his father and the stranger who had saved him exchanged looks, the young man hurried over to Sasuke and shoved him aside as he started to gently examine his mother's body. As the young man used his other hand to carefully turn Sasuke's mother over, a green glow illuminated his left hand as he ran it over her body. Her stomach's open wound started to close. By that point, Fugaku had positioned himself behind the stranger, his eyes gleaming with grief and possibly hope as he watched the stranger examine his wife, who appeared to be dead. The young man with the blonde hair's right hand erupted in lightning as he struck Sasuke's mother's chest, causing the woman's body to arch up. Sasuke ran forward to stop the stranger and yelled, "What are you doing to my mother?" With a stern bark, Fugaku clamped a hand down on his youngest, restraining him, saying, "Stop it, Sasuke. Let the medic Nin do his work." The stranger struck Sasuke's mother's chest with another fistful of lightning, seemingly unfazed by Sasuke's scream. The woman started coughing up blood this time, and she did so with a gentle gurgle. "Makoto." Fugaku gasped feebly, despite the fact that the young man with the blonde hair's hands were glowing bright green as he directed healing energy into the woman's bleeding body. As he watched the stranger heal his mother and restore the tiniest hint of color to her face, Sasuke lost consciousness for a few eerie minutes. Before his mother's eyes closed and she fell into unconsciousness, he saw her lips twist in a faint smile as her eyes flickered open. When the stranger stood up tiredly to gaze at him and his father with a look of urgency on his face, Sasuke's half-numb senses took notice. "I've stopped her bleeding, healed her flesh wounds and neutralized part of the poison in her body. But I am unable to mend the wounds in her stomach. The remaining parts of the poison that I am unable to neutralize are also destroying her nerves every minute she does not get professional help." The young man was staring at Fugaku as he spoke. "If you want her to live, you need to get her to the hospital right away. She needs a counter-agent for the poison and someone to stitch up her stomach if she's to survive the night." Sasuke turned to face his father, his face whitened. Despite his youth, he was aware of the stranger's dire intentions. "But the clan?" Fugaku exclaimed helplessly as he glanced at his wife before turning to face the front door of the house, where a faint sound of fighting and yelling could be heard coming from outside. The stranger stated firmly, "The Hokage has already been informed, he'll be here with reinforcements soon. My men and I are already in the clan and we're doing all we can to save the civilians. At this moment, take care of your loved ones if you wish them to survive the night." Fugaku and the stranger stared at one another for a moment before Fugaku abruptly leaned over and held his wife's frail body in his arms. With a fierce expression in his eyes, Fugaku commanded, "Thank you Senju, I will not forget this debt. Climb onto my back and hold tight Sasuke." Sasuke complied right away. The blonde stranger who gave Sasuke a final glance before hurrying out the front door was the last thing he saw of his house as his father's body flickered away. Yashito roared with joy and retaliation as she defeated a bystander she had previously seen in the clan. Her bloodlust was fueled by her anger and rage at what she perceived to be her own clan's betrayal upon her capture, and she killed both young and old, disregarding the fact that they had once been her own people. Alongside her, Kiro, another assassin nin, and two other people, Marenko and Kumira, who had been set free by Madara, were wreaking havoc on the clan's center, murdering everyone who stood in their way. She would bathe in their blood to demonstrate to them what a true traitor would do, despite the fact that these cowardly worms dared to call her a traitor. She broke out of her blood rage at a sudden cry from Marenko. She turned to see Marenko attempting to dodge a dense mass of roots that had sprung up out of the ground and were attempting to harm her. Yashito noticed two figures on a nearby roof. As more roots emerged to attack Kiro and Kumira as well, two men with brown hair were grimly staring down at the bloodbath while their hands flickered into hand seals. Senju, swore Yoshito. She had never seen the wood-release bloodline before, but it was well known in Konoha. This bloodline, which was regarded as a rival to the Sharingan following the fabled conflict between the first Hokage and Madara Uchiha, would have been familiar to any Konoha ninja who had completed the academy. The first Hokage's death was meant to be the end of the bloodline. Had their bloodline been a secret among the Senju clan? However, such thoughts must wait for another moment. At the moment, she and her fellow ninjas were in danger from the two Senjus. Yoshito let out a cry of fury and leapt onto the closest rooftop with the intention of attacking the two Senjus. A screeching flame phoenix exploded into the air in front of her, flying directly at the two Senjus, and her hands slid into the hand seals of a fire phoenix, extracting a huge chunk of her chakra. Who vanished? Yoshito was shocked to see the two Senju clearly shimmer in the air before vanishing from view. With the top of the building exploding in flames, the fire phoenix crashed into the tiled roof they had been standing on. However, Yoshito could not spot any charred bodies even from where she was standing, indicating that the Senjus were still alive somewhere. From the ground below came a scream and a gurgled cry. Yoshito hissed as she turned to see Kumira dangling from an odd root cage, with multiple thick roots sticking through her body. Kumira would never have made it through that. A civilian woman who had previously been at Kumira's mercy screamed again before fleeing in front of the root cage. Just as several spiky veins burst through her previous location, Yoshito jumped off the roof after a spike of chakra below her triggered her danger senses, causing her to take a kunai with the intention of cutting down the woman. In the distance, there was another cry. This time, she turned to see Marenko holding an injured arm and a kunai partially embedded in it. Marenko frantically exclaimed, "I can't see them," as she pulled out the kunai, her eyes frantically sweeping her surroundings. As Kiro's body flickered next to Yoshito, protecting each other's back as they had done numerous times, Kiro remarked, "It isn't a genjutsu." Chakra exploded from her west side, and Yoshito turned her head to the spot as a tangle of roots sprang up from under Marenko, tangles, and chokes her. Yoshito looked at Kiro and grinned grimly, ignoring Marenko's lifeless body. She and Kiro, as assassin specialists, possessed certain skill sets that were uncommon among regular chunins or even jonins. Their keen and precise chakra sensing abilities were one of these abilities. The majority of ninjas could only detect chakra from a distance, unless they were standing directly next to the person emitting the chakra or the chakra signature was extremely strong. Assassinating targets while slinking past guards or ninjas required the ability to detect chakra signatures from a distance, which set Yoshito and Kiro apart from the others. Yoshito grinned grimly and turned to face Kiro, who nodded. They can disappear into thin air, but they can't hide their chakra signature. Let's pay them back for killing Kumira and Marenko. As Yoshito threw a kunai to her left, the air was blurred. With a gentle clinking sound, the seemingly empty air next to a building burst into shivers of light, revealing a young boy with blonde hair who appeared to be no older than 8 or 9. Even though the young boy gaped at them before vanishing from view, the boy's abrupt appearance was enough to freeze Yoshito and Kiro in shock. The crunch of gravel signaled the arrival of more roots, which suddenly exploded beneath Kiro and Yoshito, breaking the abrupt silence. Yoshito screamed in agony as one of the roots glanced at her, severing the skin of her left thigh and prompting her to act. She may not understand how a grown man could suddenly disappear and transform into a young boy, but she was certain that her assailants would perish. Agonizingly, N13 hurried from Sasuke's home and headed resolutely in the direction of the spot where one of Hokage's squad was fighting Madara. His Sika was currently keeping an eye on and assessing the Hokage's team's battle, which was going poorly under the leadership of Kakashi Hitaki. The 5-man team had already lost 2 members. Madara's space attack, which was brought on by physical contact, killed the first, and an earth-type ninjutsu technique killed the second. Based on Sika's observation, Madara appeared to possess a phasing ninjutsu technique that had never been observed in the ninja community before, or at least had never been referenced in any of the books and scrolls that Sika had scanned. The S-rank Uchiha criminal was immune to the Hokage's team's attacks because Madara managed to phase out his body, rendering it intangible. Complete analyzing of Madara's phase-out technique. There's a 70% possibility that Madara was able to innately phase out parts of his body into a sub-dimension. One can still see his body, but unable to harm or touch it. It bears a 63% similarity to the experimental phasing suits that the Federation had been developing for its agents. One who puts on the suit can travel through solid objects and become impervious to physical harm for certain durations. S13 stated as N13 crested the roof. He refrained from using the chakra. Intensive body flicker technique because his chakra was depleting quickly. He had already stepped in to break up 2 battles with the traitor ninjas, including one in which he saved Sasuke. N13 grimly hoped, so you mean Madara can only use his technique for certain durations? Only 3 clones remained in the Uchiha clan at the time of N11's death, but assistance was on the way. At the moment, N12 and N14 were enmeshed in a different area of the clan rescuing a group of civilians. Thus, he was the only chance for Kakashi's team to survive. However, if he was unable to hurt the man, even he was powerless. Unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case. Madara's phase-out technique seemed to surpass the technological limitations of the Federation's phasing suits. Currently it seemed that Madara suffered no ill effects from being in a prolonged phase-out state. S13 clarified. However, I did detect one vulnerability that could be exploited. Every time Madara launched an attack, he had to shift his body back into a solid state. It seemed that any action that needs him to interact with his surroundings would need him to be solid. As he landed on another roof, N13 smiled and sped off in the direction of his goal. That's good news, so we just need to provoke him into an attack before attacking ourselves. His focus was interrupted by the cries of frightened children. N13's mouth formed a grim line as he turned his head and saw a group of civilian families huddled close to their children, their faces showing desperation as they were surrounded by ninjas brandishing weapons. These ninjas were identified as hostiles when the bodies of multiple other civilians, including a baby, were found on the ground. N13 screamed, "Damn it," and jumped down to halt the assault. Kakashi's team will have to survive on their own. I can't just let these people be slaughtered. To defend the civilians from the traitor ninjas' attack, N13 shaved a sizable portion of his remaining chakra into massive wood walls by flicking his hands into the hand seals for a wood release technique. As he attempted to use his rapidly dwindling chakra to swiftly end the fight, N13 uttered the grim words, "I hope I can last through this fight." Kakashi ducked down, panting, his entire body screaming in agony. He was on a marble-tiled roof when he was knocked off by a strong blast of air and fell to the ground. The powerful gust of wind from the attack had torn his tattered face mask off. Minutes after they had engaged in combat with the then unknown Uchiha, Kakashi twisted frantically and managed to land with 2 feet, directly in front of his teammate Rukimaru's half-mangled body, which had been killed by an odd space-time attack. At the moment, he was avoiding the same space-time attack. He was aware of the identity of this Uchiha attacker by now, of course. The notorious Madara Uchiha, an S-rank criminal who was permanently recorded in Konoha's history books, had fought the first Hokage. About 10 minutes ago, Kakashi received the Hokage's urgent transmission. His entire team was too preoccupied with defending themselves to respond to the Hokage at that time, and now he was the only survivor of his 5-man team. They had attempted to use their most potent methods to attack him. Madara had also been hit by the majority of the techniques, prior to passing through his body, leaving him intact. Everyone was taken aback the first time, which allowed Madara to eliminate Kiera, a high chunin assigned to the team. Kakashi and his group had attempted weapon attacks and other ninjutsus, but they had failed. Everyone was resigned to their fate, and the final 10 minutes of the battle had devolved into a desperate struggle. They all used their lives to buy time for Shibi's team to evacuate more civilians from the compound, even though they knew that a prolonged battle with Madara would be their demise. All of them were Konoha ninjas, and they were prepared to sacrifice themselves in order to defend Konoha's citizens. Such a pity. As Kakashi attempted to stand up, a long shadow covered his bloodied and pained body. Kakashi slowly raised his head to see Madara smiling down at him from a few feet away. "You used your one Sharingan eye beautifully in battle, even though you were not born with it. I have need of ninjas like you with your talents. How would you like to join me?" Kakashi spat at Madara, who did not even blink at the insult, saying, "Thanks but no thanks. I will die before joining a murderer such as you. You will pay for the deaths of my teammates." I see, you're one of those who believed in the will of the fire and the nonsense of the Shoden. Never let your teammates down or some foolery such as that. Madara replied with a casual shrug. "I'm afraid I never could stand the teachings of that peace-loving fool, and I find it utterly detestable when such a potentially powerful ninja such as you believed in his teachings. It seemed I would have to destroy you after all." Spitting blood away as he flexed his hands in preparation for launching into the hand seals required to summon a fire dragon, Kakashi said, "You can try." He could not control another Chidori, which had been ineffective against Madara, and his chakra was starting to run low. He could only hope to buy time for Team Hawk and the other civilians from Uchiha to flee. As Madara's hands moved into a seal, a sneer crossed his face, but before anything could happen, the ground beneath them rumbled. Just as dozens of thick roots exploded out of the ground he was standing on, Madara's eyes widened and he leapt into the air. Kakashi was shocked to see dozens of strangers standing on rooftops all around him and Madara shimmering into view. One of the men, a black-haired, muscular stranger who appeared to be in his 30s, yelled, "The cavalry has arrived, Madara Uchiha. Let's see how well you'll do against us." A dense forest grew around the makeshift battlefield, and thick trees started to sprout out of the ground right in front of Kakashi's eyes. Itachi hurried up the short stairs and staggered into the partially open front door of his house, stumbling into the front lawn while suppressing a grimace of pain. His first thought was that there was a lot of blood all over the place. The second item was the sword, wielding, lifeless Uchiha that was resting in a living room corner. Itachi hurried inside the house and looked on the first and second floors, but he couldn't find his parents or brother. He was somewhat relieved that he had not discovered any of their remains. It implied that his father must have repelled the attackers who had pursued them in some way. But his curiosity about their whereabouts continued to cause him anxiety. Itachi tensed when he heard a noise at the front door, then relaxed when he saw Shisui burst through the door. After a quick glance around the room and holding out kunais in a defensive positive, his best friend stood up as soon as he saw Itachi. Shisui lowered his kunais and exclaimed, "Itachi," in surprise. "I was looking for your father. The clan is under attack and all our able ninjas are grouping together to evacuate the civilians and counter the attacks." Itachi took charge of the situation and demanded, "What's the status?" He would have to temporarily set aside his concern about his family's whereabouts in order to focus on the urgency of the attack on his clan. "A lot of civilians and ninjas were wounded and killed in the first wave of the attack, but we managed to regroup and counterattack thanks to some early warning. Shibi Aburame apparently had a team nearby and he managed to aid in the fight. The noise of the battle alerted a lot of us. Kakashi Hatake was also sighted fighting against a powerful unknown Uchiha. There was a rumor that it was Madara Uchiha." Shisui replied with a swollen face. "Is that true, Itachi?" Itachi sidestepped Shisui's question for the time being, his lips pressing into a thin grim line. Shisui still needed his friend to provide him with more information, so it would be foolish to make him anxious. In an attempt to gain insight into the entire situation, Itachi inquired, "What other updates do you have?" There were 3 unknown wood release users running around at the beginning of the fight. It was thanks to them that a lot of the civilians and ninjas were saved. 2 of them were killed, but not before they took down Yashito, Kiro, Marenko and Kumira with them. Shisui stated with a frantic expression in his normally gaze. Itachi said, somewhat surprised, Yashito, Kiro, and Marenko were Jonins, and the other was a high-level Chunin. 2 unknown strangers managed to take them out? That's not all. During the battle, one of the civilians saw the 2 strangers vanishing into thin air before launching powerful wood release attacks. Kumira was killed and Marenko injured before Yashito somehow managed to see past the invisibility technique of the 2. The tides of the battle turned then. Both sides were eliminated in the end, and the civilians who were in hiding claimed that when the 2 wood release users died, they turned into smoke, Shisui said while looking at Itachi. Itachi whispered, "Shadow clones." His thoughts abruptly returned to the countless wood release users who were sifting through the Anbu Tower's debris to rescue everyone stranded below. He started to question who all of those wood release users were at that point. However, that was a question for another time, when the clan compound was free of impending battles. Yes, there was also a 3rd wood release user sighted near the area of your home. He went up against 5 of our traitor ninjas, 4 of them Chunins and 1 Jonin level. He managed to buy time for the civilians on this side to escape before more of our ninjas could arrive to help. Anubi, who had arrived with a group of his men, saw the stranger took down 3 of the Chunins before turning into smoke on his own accord. Shisui replied with an odd expression on his face. That stranger was a shadow clone as well, and I think it dispelled because its chakra was used up. Itachi probed for more details, asking, "What of our people, Shisui?" The majority of the survivors have been evacuated into the northern and western forest. 3 of our best teams of ninjas still alive are scouring the clan compound now for any more survivors and joining in the battle. But most are staying in the forest protecting the refugees. Shisui was grumbling. "Where's Fugaku, Itachi? He's the clan head, he's supposed to be leading us right now." Itachi stated firmly, "I don't know. But I am his son, and I will lead in his place." Shisui, coordinate with the 3 teams, order them to avoid battles. Their first priority is to get all of our civilians and wounded out of the clan compound. Once that's done, pull out and hide in the forest until the Hokage arrives. In the meantime, Shisui, tell me where Kakashi and his team are. If I am right, they might not have long to live. With a pale and drawn face, Shisui gripped his kunais tightly and uttered, "The man that they are up against is really Madara, isn't he? Itachi, He's supposed to be an S-rank ninja. Even a prodigy such as you would be unable to deal with him without more help. You'll die. Itachi made a firm demand, and so you want me to let Kakashi and his team die instead? Shisui, Madara Uchiha was once of our clan. He is our trash to take care of. This is clan business, and I'll take care of it. Show me where they're, Shisui, and when you're done. Do me a favor, help me find my family. Protect them for me, if I am unable to return. In the tree, forest battlefield, he was known by many names. He was Toby, the silent voice that directed the group's activities from the background, to the clandestine group he had created from the shadows in recent years, one he called Akatsuki. When he needed to instill fear and awe in both his adversaries and subordinates, he would sometimes go by the name Madara Uchiha. Few people in this world truly understood who he was. And that's how he liked it. With the help of a potent transformation seal that changed his scarred face to resemble the man, he assumed the mantle of Madara in his quest to destroy the Uchiha clan and subsequently Konoha, which encouraged the rebellious Uchihas to support him. Madara Uchiha. He would continue to go by that name until the village and this cursed clan were completely destroyed by fire. Then came the conflict with Kakashi, the person who had led him down this path and whose face he had not seen in a long time. He had hated the man with all his heart. He had initially only intended to murder the white-haired ninja, but after witnessing the man's valiant struggle, his determination and unpleasant memories from the past had come back. His numb emotional void had been roused into chaos by old hurts. He had played with Kakashi, hoping to destroy his values in the same manner that he had destroyed his own. He had given Kakashi an opportunity to leave Konoha. The purpose of the vacuous offer was to determine whether Kakashi was sufficiently damaged. However, that offer was spit back in the man's face. He had felt admiration for a moment. Then the users of wood release arrived. Madara landed on top of one of the numerous tall trees that had sprung up around the makeshift battlefield after a brief body flicker. All around him were men of various ages and appearances, all of whom seemed to possess the fabled wood release power. His own application of the wood release bloodline was restricted. The notorious ninja had substituted replicas made from first Hokage cells for his injured right hand and leg when he was saved by the real Madara Uchiha decades prior. He had access to the wood release bloodline because the artificial limbs were perfectly matched to his chakra system, but he lacked the level of control and dexterity that someone who was born with the bloodline would have. Additionally, using the artificially implanted bloodline depleted a significant portion of his chakra, making the majority of wood release techniques ineffective for him as a combat option when he could just use his more powerful fire and earth elements. Madara was aware that appearances could be deceiving, but the army of odd wood release users gathered in front of him appeared menacing. He was fairly sure that the men assembled were all clones of one man. According to his acute chakra senses, these men had the same chakra signature, which is a strong earthly feeling with a touch of controlled chaos. A skilled sensor like him was the only one who could sense the quality of each individual's chakra. This man was definitely not a senju, at least not from the main branch, Madara was sure of. After all, his true teacher had been hiding in the background for years, eliminating any senju who appeared to have the elusive bloodline from birth. Nawaki Senju, Tsunade Senju's younger brother, was the final member of the wood release bloodline potential that the strong man had eliminated. Madara made his move because the young Senju was starting to show signs of developing into the wood release bloodline. The Senju deaths were all staged to appear to be accidents. To his knowledge, no Senjus alive today were aware that the wood release bloodline had not resurfaced in the clan because the clan's potential bloodline wielders were being weeded out. In 2 more generations, the Senju clan's bloodline would most likely disappear if he carried out his teacher's mission to exterminate the wood release bloodline wielders. His teacher must have missed some distant kinship to the Senju in the man who had produced all those clones with the wood release bloodline. However, the fact that Madara was unaware of this man's presence in Konoha until tonight exposed a significant weakness in his spy network concerning this cursed village. Madara sneered, his inner battle rage starting to roar. He had easily defeated the first clone with the wood release bloodline he had come across in the first assault on the Uchiha clan compound. It was a testament to the unknown man's immersed chakra reserves that he was able to mount an army of clones to oppose him. However, this unidentified man's battle abilities were far inferior to his, based on the abilities of the first clone he had distributed. Parts of the first clone's body had been sent into another dimension, making its destruction especially simple. These cloned eyesores should be easily removed, and the person who had somehow managed to acquire the bloodline Madara had been trying to eradicate for years should be destroyed. He stood on a tree that grew into many thick branches that slashed violently at his body. As the branches went through his body as if he were not there, Madara grinned and looked at the clones all around him. He developed the space. time migration technique using his right eye, which was a Sharingan technique. It made it possible for him to teleport instantly and transform into an intangible entity that was impervious to damage. Additionally, it enabled him to transport anyone he came into contact with into a different pocket dimension or location. He could teleport parts of another person's body away to destroy them if used offensively. It did, of course, have two obvious problems. He would have to make his body physical again, leaving himself vulnerable to attack, if he tried to teleport, engage with the outside world, or launch any kind of attack. Importantly, he could only render himself intangible for 5 minutes at a time, after which he would be at risk of dying. Few people alive today are aware of the technique's secret, which enables Madara to easily eliminate a great number of enemies. As Madara battled the horde of cloned wood release users, it also gave him confidence. Looking at the clones sitting atop the trees, Madara yelled in an emotionless voice, "Who are you? I would at least know the name of the one I am going to kill." The clone nearest to him answered, "Who we are is of no consequence to you. Madara Uchiha. You will be stopped here and now." With a sneer, Madara said, "You can't hurt me." As dazzling white light flared up in front of his eyes, he let out a strangled cry. He quickly closed his eyes in agony as the light burned them. He instantly teleports himself to a nearby tree out of reflex. He blinked for a moment, stunned by the intense light. Then, as a rapid eruption of tough and sharp brambles grew from the tree he was standing on, slashing at his position, he felt a massive wave of chakra envelop him, turning his body intangible. Not wanting to go over his allotted 5 minutes, Madara hurried to another tree and got himself physically fit again. He cried out in agony as a flash of bright light suddenly flared in front of his eyes again. Madara had just enough time to teleport away before fast growing branches slashed his legs. Madara landed on another tree in the distance, panting and limping a little. How did the clones manage to do it? When the unidentified light ninjutsu materialized over his eyes, he did not detect any chakra. When the bright wall of light materialized in front of his face, there was no chakra leakage to alert him to its presence. The wall of light engulfed Madara's face once more, and he blinked quickly to get his vision back. Madara's cries this time were filled with anger. His hand extended, slashed at his eyes, and collided with a block of solid material that was encircling his face. The block of light shattered and vanished into emptiness with a tinkling sound. As the tree he stood on exploded into a mass of slashing greenery out for his blood, Madara managed to maintain enough situational awareness to render himself intangible. Madara snarled and ran from the spot he had taken to another treetop, saying, "Curse it." It was not a good time. The battleground was in favor of the army of clones with wood release bloodline, and it was surrounded by tall trees. Of course, he could use his wood release skills to counter, but Madara was not ready to make the world aware of his fabled ancestry just yet. Additionally, he was fairly certain that the clones' wood release techniques were far more potent than his own. Additionally, he had other long-range attacks that were better suited to his fighting style, so he had never felt the need to investigate the clones' apparent specialization in quick, long-range wood release ninjutsus. Madara's battle performance had been off balance thus far, especially when you factor in the strange ninjutsu that caused him to become blind. A block of light appeared in front of his face, indicating that the light attack was some form of ninjutsu. He had to stay in physical form to destroy it. He must also stay physically present in this world in order to teleport away from it. He exposes himself to attacks in both circumstances. In addition, the army of clones appeared to exploit the situation by striking him quickly while he was still dazed and distracted by the light attack. Only these clones had been able to injure him with a barrage of overwhelming attacks in all the battles he had faced since his attack on the Uchiha clan. They appeared to be aware of the limitations of his space-time migration method. Only after he had reintegrated into the real world did the various wood release attacks take place. The blinding light attack would also force him to return to the physical world in order to avoid or destroy it if he phased out. Madara froze as he considered that random thought after having a sudden epiphany. Is it possible that this unidentified man, accompanied by his clones, had recognized the boundaries of his trump technique? He had been so sure that no one was aware of the components of his space-time migration method. Once more, a brilliant light flared before his eyes. Madara was ready for it this time. Just in time to avoid being ripped apart by strong wood release attacks that swept through his body, he quickly destroyed the block of light and turned intangible. The weird light jutsu that resurfaced over Madara's face instantly blinded him as he leapt to the next tree and became physical once more. This time, Madara teleported himself a few feet behind where he was at the moment. When he emerged on the top of another tree, he saw that the area where he had been standing was being cut up by a huge growth of slashing branches and leaves. In the distance, the clones stared calmly back at Madara as he glared at them. Madara might have dismissed the attacks as chance if they had occurred only once or twice. However, his space time migration attack had been rendered ineffective due to the clone's speed and uniqueness of attack. Madara knew he needed to act quickly before these clones ruined his plans for the Uchiha clan and Konoha, since his trump card was useless against the clone army. By the time the next light attack erupted over his previous position, Madara had already teleported himself away. Madara sneered at the sight of the clones on the treetops as he fell to the ground in the air, his hands rapidly flashing into a series of long hand seals, from his new position high above the dense growth of trees. The clones were too far up in the air to use their wood release skills to touch him. It was time he eliminated the terrain advantage of the clones and forced the battlefield to follow his regulations. Earth release. Death Spikes, the current clone army and the N55 leader of the research clones, remained well behind the battlefield's front line. With the help of his Sika, S55, he was able to quickly map out the entire battlefield and give immediate orders to the clones serving as his foot soldiers in this conflict. Delaying Madara Uchiha until Boss and the Hokage's militia could arrive was their aim. They were also tasked with gathering crucial information about Madara and analyzing his fighting style. Data collected by the now expired N12, N13, and N14 already showed a serious weakness in Madara's phase-out strategy. Before their arrival, the clones had used 50 or more Sikas to perform calculations on the collected battle data and discovered that, despite Madara's ability to switch between physical and intangible forms quickly and without rest, something that even the Federation's phase suits could not do, the amount of time Madara spent in an intangible form was consistently less than a few minutes. 4 minutes was the longest Madara had remained intangible. If Madara could remain intangible for a long time, it begged the question of why he would voluntarily become physical. And Madara could not remain intangible for longer than a specific amount of time, the combined Sikas concluded. After that, the Sikas had calculated a method to successfully stop Madara's phase-out strategy. The Sikas had devised a scheme to blind Madara by projecting a solid beam of glaring light over his eyes, taking into account that all of them were able to holographically project within a 6-meter radius. After all, blinding Madara would essentially limit his movements and render him disabled, regardless of whether he was intangible or physical. Madara would actually have to remain physically present if he wanted to break the block of light covering his eyes, leaving him vulnerable to the clones' attacks. It was really unfortunate that they were unable to make offensive use of the holographic projection skills of the numerous Sikas. However, the existence of a space where solid light could form constrained Sikas' holographic endeavors. The only issue was that solid light could not form through dense or solid objects, but it could form over and around any object. As a result, the numerous Sikas were unable to create holographic weapons with which to stab Madara. Instead, they could only blind him and impair his vision. They could, of course, resist their surroundings to a limited extent once the projected light had solidified into projections. However, there is little that solid light projections could do to Madara unless he willingly ran into projected light daggers at high speed. That specific blazing light method had proven effective thus far, blinding Madara first, then using wood release techniques to attack him from a distance while he was physically firm and unsteady. S50 report that N50 had reached Kakashi Hitaki's side, and is now assisting him away from the battlefield. N50 had managed to apply basic healing techniques to treat the flesh wounds of the gravely injured ninja. Kakashi should be able to seek further medical attention on his own, S55 said, its mental voice echoing in N55's head. Good, everything is going according plan. Madara can't go on the offensive, especially when we keep blinding him, N55 replied with approval. Scans of Madara Uchiha had picked up on him using some kind of instantaneous teleporting technique to evade current attacks. It was noticeably faster than a normal body flicker technique. It would bear watching. S55 warned N55 about his next move. Then we'll just have to make sure he does not have a chance to use that teleporting technique offensively, N55 replied with determination. S55, pass the message. Order S51, 52 and 53 to keep up their holographic blinding attack. The rest of the clones be on. S55 interrupted. Madara Uchiha had just disappeared. Scans detected that he had teleported himself above the forest the clones have called up. He is attempting some ninjutsu. A large amount of chakra is pouring out from him. Scans are detecting some kind of vibration spreading through the ground. As the tree he was crouching on started to wobble and the ground beneath him rumbled, N55's eyes narrowed. The ground rose in front of N55, who yelled, "Send a message to all clones. Ask them to brace themselves." Instead, in a matter of seconds, Kakashi lost sight of Madara and the army of strange saviors that had arrived as many trees kept growing out of the ground. As he pushed himself off the ground he was lying on and pulled his bloodied body toward the relative safety of a large tree that had grown up close by, Kakashi let out a short gasp of pain. As he looked up towards the treetops, attempting to get a glimpse of the battle taking place above, he briefly struggled with lightheadedness and gasped for air. He then became tense due to a sudden presence to his left, and he quickly turned to face the new target while suppressing a cry of pain as his body twitched painfully. The young, brown-haired man standing far away from him reassured him, "Do not worry. I am here to help. You're badly injured and need medical assistance immediately. I am assigned to escort you out of the battlefield here, and to treat your minor injuries so that you could at least seek help on your own." "Who are you? Where are all of you from?" Kakashi inquired, becoming a little more relaxed. The newcomer must be a member of the army that appeared out of nowhere and used the fabled wood release techniques to grow all these trees. The young man, whose hands were glowing green with healing chakra, said, "Who we are is not important at the moment." The open flesh wounds on Kakashi's arms started to close when he placed his hands on them. "Know that we are here to counter Madara and save as many lives as possible." The majority of Kakashi's pain was relieved as the healing chakra surged through his body. The visible flesh wounds on his body had all healed within minutes. The young man looked up at Kakashi and said, "I can only heal the minor injuries you have suffered. You still need medical attention for your more serious injuries. Come, I'll escort you out of this battlefield. We need to get you out of here fast." Knowing that he was unable to fight even with his recently repaired condition, Kakashi nodded and conceded, "All right." He would be nearly useless in a close fight unless he used taijutsu attacks because his chakra was nearly completely depleted. The young man put one arm around Kakashi's shoulders to steady him and said, "Good, lean on me. I'll use the body flicker technique to get us out of the woods." He started to flash into one-handed hand seals with his freed hand. They emerged at the edge of the recently grown woods with a whirl of wind and a burst of speed. The youth released Kakashi, and he staggered a little. He quickly looked around and realized he was in the Uchiha compound's west quarters. Kakashi nodded in gratitude and said, "Thank you for your aid." Kakashi's words were interrupted by the shuddering of the ground beneath their feet. When the young man turned to face Kakashi, his eyes grew wide. With a quick flash of hand seals, he yelled, "You've got to get out of here now." A huge, dense vine sprang up out of the ground, snatched Kakashi, and flung him motionless into the air. When Kakashi leapt through the air at the strong throw, he witnessed the earth trembling violently before enormous earth spikes sliced their way out of the ground where he had been standing, uprooting and chopping up the recently grown trees. He was shocked to see that the young man who had saved his life had been pierced through the body by one of the earth spikes. A tinkling sound shattered the image of the young man, revealing the eyes of a blond boy puffing into smoke, filled with pain. Unaware that he had fallen to the ground, Kakashi stood unsteadily on his legs and gazed at a wasteland of enormous spikes where enormous trees had once stood. His mind was still attempting to process what he had witnessed. The young boy who had puffed into smoke was someone he knew. Furthermore, as part of his Anbu responsibilities, he had frequently watched over the young boy over the years. The boy was Naruto Uzumaki, the Kyuubi's demon container and, as is less well known, the son of Kakashi's former sensei, the fourth Hokage. Kakashi was stunned as he looked into the rising dust of the newly created battlefield, which was made up of ripped vegetation and earth spikes. He wondered what all of this could mean. Madara realized that things were not as they seemed when she heard tinkling noises amid the monotonous rumble of the earth. The illusion that surrounded the army of clones was shattered as the strong earth spikes pierced them, exposing the shocked and agonized faces of numerous young boys with blonde hair. Madara's eyes narrowed at the sight, and he landed harmlessly on a protruding earth spike. The enigmatic wood release user was only a young boy, to think. Not just any boy, either. Oh Madara, she recognized the head of sunshine blonde hair, the whispered cheeks, and those clear blue eyes. Given that one of his long-term goals was to seize all demon containers and free their seal-tailed beasts, how could he not? The only demon container in Konoha had been monitored by his spy network. The fourth Hokage's son, Naruto Uzumaki, appears to have the wood release bloodline and possesses extraordinary intelligence at an early age, enabling him to outlast Madara in combat for more than a few minutes when utilizing only shadow clones. It was unclear how Naruto Uzumaki, who had no Senju ancestry, had acquired the wood release bloodline. However, Kushina Uzumaki was the mother of Konoha's demon container. The wood release bloodline might have been descended from that damned woman, as the Uzumaki clan were distant cousins of the Senjus. The tailed beasts were supposed to be bound by the wood release bloodline. Given his future plans, it was bad news that the Kyuubi's demon container carries this bloodline. Madara scowled as he examined the few clones that had escaped his attack. They all regarded him with caution as they perched atop the terrain of earth spikes. With a somber expression, Madara remarked, "So the demon container of Konoha seeks to interfere in my plans, and possesses the wood-release bloodline to boot. It seems I will need to deal with this problem fast before he grows to become an actual threat." It was simple to see the battleground that Shisui had directed him to, especially considering that as soon as he left his clan home, huge tree patches started to grow from the location. Before his childhood friend hurried off to organize the Uchiha ninjas who were searching the clan compound for survivors, Shisui had given him a silently pleading look that warned him to exercise caution. With his heart fortified, Itachi hurried to the location where Madara was last seen. Before he pushed the thoughts away, he briefly wondered who Madara was now facing and considered the enormous trees that had grown in the area. When he arrived at the battlefield, he would know. Itachi felt an immersed chakra spreading through the ground as his body flitted to the edge of the woods and prepared to enter. Giant earth spikes pierced out of the trembling and crumbling ground, upending the newly grown woods before he could even jump back. In an instant, the terrain in front of him was made up of enormous earth spikes that interlocked, with broken and ripped trees imprisoned inside. Itachi entered the battlefield cautiously, leaping atop the earth spikes and moving swiftly to the center, where a dark-haired man with Sharingan eyes faced off against a number of strangers who had survived the attack. Itachi had a sudden realization that he was staring at his target. Madara Uchiha, the notorious Uchiha traitor. "You really think you actually have a chance against me with your pathetic wood release attacks? There are only 9 of you now, and most of you have little chakra left after surviving my earth attack. Why don't you just ask the real one to face me and save all of us the trouble? I am going to hunt him down anyway," Madara said while sneering at the outsiders his body. A distasteful smile appeared on his face as his gaze fell upon Itachi. "And what do we have here? The proclaimed Uchiha prodigy of this generation, Itachi Uchiha. I would have thought that my attack on the Anbu Tower would have dealt with you." As he stood next to the 9 strangers, Itachi said in a detached tone, "You thought wrong then." Even though he had no idea who those strangers were, he was satisfied that they were fighting Madara. "Madara Uchiha. For your crimes against the Uchiha clan, there can only be death." Madara's hands flashed into a series of hand seals as he said, "We shall see." Itachi copied the hand seals and activated his Sharingan. They both yelled, "Earth Release, Earth Dragon," as 2 Earth Dragons arose and started colliding. Madara's eyes flashed with dazzling light, and the notorious Uchiha let out a cry of rage. Itachi's Earth Dragon destroyed Madara's uncontrollably spinning Earth Dragon. Madara had vanished and resurfaced in a different location far away before Itachi could attack the enemy nin. One of the strangers turned to Itachi and said, "We might be low on chakra, but we can still blind you, Madara. Take advantage of the distraction we provide and attack, Itachi Uchiha." Itachi accepted the stranger's assistance and nodded in gratitude as he repelled Madara, who was now wearing an angry expression. As Madara's hands flashed into a series of hand seals that Itachi started to mimic, he gritted his teeth and yelled, "Pesky clones. I'll deal with you first." Earth Release. Death shards. As he completed the unidentified technique, Itachi became the first to notice something was amiss. Much of his chakra sank into the earth beneath him. As his chakra senses informed him of the technique's effects, his eyes widened. As the enormous earth spikes they were standing on broke into enormous pieces of earth that started to cut the air around them, Itachi yelled in alarm, "Shield yourself!" to the strangers. Itachi barely escaped injuries as dozens of sharp earth shards slashed his last standing position as he leapt into the air to avoid the blast of earth shrapnel. The air behind him was filled with tinkling noises. When Itachi turned his head after landing on the relative safety of a pile of wood and earth wreckage, all he saw were puffs of smoke as the strangers, who appeared to be shadow clones, were chased away by the ruthless earth technique. Itachi briefly experienced some relief when he realized that by carelessly imitating whatever method Madara was employing, he had not unintentionally killed his unidentified allies. Itachi scanned his surroundings quickly, tensing up for a fight as the moment passed. In the distance, he saw Madara standing atop a stack of slabs of earth, apparently untouched by the intense earth blast that had taken place. Madara sneered and remarked, "Now it's just you and me. Prodigy of the Uchiha clan. Unfortunately I have a new threat to neutralize and I have no time to play with you, so let's end this fast." Naruto felt the last of his army of clones dispelled, and memories crashed into him. As Naruto's body flickered to the top of the eastern walls of the Uchiha clan compound, Sika relayed, "Madara is indeed powerful. He had destroyed the last of the research clones sent to the Uchiha compound. Itachi Uchiha is now facing the man alone. Unfortunately, it seemed Madara had recognized your real appearance when the holographic projections over your clones had shattered. Scanned recording of Madara's voiced words showed that he viewed you as a threat. Also, Kakashi Hayate had seen your real appearance as well. Your hidden identity in Konoha might be revealed. We've no time to worry if someone is going to reveal me as the Eye right now. Madara is the greater concern for the moment, Naruto grumbled. He stopped to catch his breath after landing on the roof of a civilian residence. He should arrive at the eastern walls of the Uchiha compound with one more body flicker. The research Sikas did good work coming up with ways to use their holographic projections offensively by blinding Madara. It handicapped Madara, but unfortunately he was still capable of powerful ninjutsus that could kill my clones in one shot. I need a solution. A delaying tactic. Something that would enable me to survive long enough until Old Man Hokage could arrive with his militia. According to clones at the village center, the militia is assembling fast. We'll probably just need to buy another half an hour of time. Sika disclosed. It is advisable for you to remain at the edge of the Uchiha compound while constantly creating shadow clones to battle Madara. With the Kyuubi providing an unlimited reservoir of chakra, theoretically you should be able to last half an hour of shadow clone spamming without burning out your chakra coils. Naruto agreed as his body flicker technique landed him on the eastern walls of the Uchiha compound, saying, "That seems like the best plan until we can come up with something better. And we really need to come up with a way that can prevent our identities from being revealed once the holographic projections are shattered. I can ask the clones to maintain a constant transformation technique under the holographic projections, but that is only feasible in non-combat situations, where chakra drain is not a matter of life and death. I will begin working on analyzing possible alternate solutions," Sika said. As Naruto's hands started flashing into the hand seals for the shadow clone technique, his eyes narrowed. 30 shadow clones appeared in an instant. After nodding to Naruto, they hurried over to the battlefield, where Madara was now battling Itachi. Their individual Sikas are already superimposed with various holographic representations of their physical attributes. "Cloak me, Sika, while I get ready for the second wave," Naruto said, disappearing from view as a cloak fell over him. A second group of 30 or more clones emerged a few minutes later and proceeded toward the heart of the Uchiha clan compound, where a bloody battle was in progress. With a single eye blink, Madara materialized directly in front of him, her hands raised, and then stabbed him. Itachi barely used a body replacement technique with a nearby slab of earth, and his eyes widened in surprise. He reappeared far away and watched in disbelief as Madara touched the slab of earth that had once stood where Itachi had been. As the earth slab started to rapidly collapse in on itself, the air surrounding it appeared to distort. Madara had most likely employed some kind of time-space distortion method, and there was the way Madara had used a body flicker technique to appear before him in an instant. Whatever the method, Itachi was certain that it also bent space and time. It was understandable why Madara was listed as a strong and intimidating ninja opponent in the Uchiha clan's archives if he could effortlessly use such techniques. He barely had time to reflect before Madara materialized in front of him. Madara launched several swift blows at Itachi without hesitation, and he was on full defensive before he could even raise his kunai to block the blow. He avoided being repeatedly pierced by Madara's kunai thanks to his Sharingan and years of training. Having calmly accepted his death, he had gone into the battle. Even though Itachi was referred to as a Uchiha prodigy, he was realistic enough to understand that Madara was too strong for him to overcome. The infamous Uchiha ninja was renowned for his numerous draws with the first Hokage. It was absurd to think that he could have killed the man. Instead, Itachi's true goal was to delay Madara so that more of his clan members could flee and hide. In an attempt to stop Madara from destroying the Uchiha clan, Itachi would risk his life. His left arm was sliced open by a swipe that went through his defense. Itachi staggered back in disbelief, grunting in pain. Madara grabbed at him with his right hand during his brief moment of distraction. Itachi just managed to leap back, pushing Madara away with his left hand raised in a warding motion. Their two hands made contact. The air itself appeared to distort. As his left hand twisted and vanished with a sickening pop, Itachi stared in shock and barely contained horror as a shower of blood splattered the air in front of him. At that moment, he let out a strangled cry of pain as he looked down at the stump of his left hand, which ended at the elbow. All of Itachi's anger and pain were directed into his right arm as he leapt forward and struck Madara multiple times before she leapt away. He was aware that his time was running out. He was unable to perform any jutsus that required two-handed seals since he lost a hand. He would soon bleed to death because there was no time or means to seal his wound. It was better that he battled Madara one last time with what strength he had left and ensured that his sacrifice was not in vain. He was suddenly carried quickly towards the back by something that wrapped around his waist from behind. When Itachi looked down, he saw that he had been snatched from the jaws of death by a powerful green vine. Then, A few feet behind him, it dropped him into the throng of strangers. Though one of the men hurried forward and applied green healing chakra to Itachi, tending to his numerous wounds, none of them appeared to be hostile. The medic Nin leaned over Itachi and said, "You're seriously injured. Hang on, I am bringing you to the Konoha hospital." "No. Madara." Itachi started to protest feebly, attempting to stand up but being restrained by the unidentified man. The man nodded to the strangers huddled protectively around them and said, "Don't worry. My brothers will take care of him." Thick, enormous green vines shot up from the ground in front of them, snapping in Madara's direction as the strangers made multiple hand seals. "For now just rest. Madara will not have the Uchiha clan while we still stand. That I can promise." As the swarm of clones flung themselves at him, blinding him and launching numerous wood attacks, Madara snarled. Minutes ago, he had lost sight of Itachi Uchiha, but he didn't really care where the boy was. The clone army that was pitted against him also failed to stump him. Madara was sure he could get rid of them with ease if he had enough time. Time was the issue. He was no new Chunin. He understood the purpose of the hordes of clones that Konoha's demon container was hurling at him. The child was purchasing time for the arrival of reinforcements. He was pretty sure the third Hokage was already en route. No, he needed to hurry. Before he left the village, he had to kill Konoha's demon container, at the very least. The child would grow up to be a deadly threat with such strength and intelligence. Fighting the clones was useless. There would be 3 more to replace each one he destroyed. The number of clones that kept popping up was both astounding and somewhat concerning because each one had the chakra reserves of a ninja at least on the Chunin level. The total amount of chakra used to create the clones was many times greater than the Hokage level chakra reserves when the combined chakra reserves of all the clones were added together. It showed Madara that the 9 Tails demon container had successfully tamed the demon inside of him through his wood release bloodline, allowing him to summon the 9 Tails limitless chakra whenever he wanted. The demon container would be a formidable opponent if he survived to adulthood. Madara questioned whether he could defeat the creature. It was necessary to eradicate this bothersome weed before it could spread farther. Instead of letting a Konoha ninja who was matched against him use such power, Madara would prefer to destroy the demon container and free the 9 Tail. He had already identified the source of all the clones. The clone army had likely believed that they could simply outnumber him and had not bothered to conceal their movements. Their downfall would come from that. Even if they blinded him, he would still be able to teleport far away. Somewhere east of the Uchiha compound was the original demon container. Most likely inside the clan compound itself, given how quickly the clones had come in succession. Madara physically faded as he teleported away as the clones blinded him with intense light and launched another round of potent wood release attacks. Time was of the essence, and he had a fox to hunt. Naruto was sitting on the east wall of the Uchiha clan compound when Sika reported, Madara had managed to annihilate Squad 16 of the new clones. But we currently have over 500 clones facing off against him, with more on the way. I am confident that we could hold him off until help arrived. Over 200 clones were destroyed in the initial waves of attack, and Naruto was struggling to cope with the mental strain of producing over 500,000 clones in a short period of time. Still concealed by Sika's holographic cloak, Naruto stood up and asked, "How long until the Hokage arrives?" He was certain that Sika's cloak would conceal him from physical view, so he had sent all clones after Madara. Village Clones states that the Hokage had mobilized the militia. They would be reaching within 10 minutes, Sika said. As perspiration trickled down his brow, Naruto remarked, "That's good. I am beginning to feel the strain of all the mental feedbacks from the destroyed clones." Naruto tensed up in shock as Sika abruptly said, "I have incoming news. Half of Squad 7 were destroyed and Madara Uchiha had vanished from the battlefield. Scans had picked him up reappearing half a mile from the battlefield towards our direction. He has disappeared again." Naruto barely had time to gasp in disbelief before Madara Uchiha's maniacal, victorious face materialized before him. When Madara's hand delivered a strong punch that broke the holographic cloak that was projected over Naruto, he exclaimed with satisfaction, "I found you." As Naruto started to choke, he held him by the neck and hung him in midair. As a flash of light passed over Madara's eyes, Sika remarked, "I am blinding him." Naruto's air pipe crashed, leaving him unable to breathe, and he struggled feebly. He felt uneasy that it would be too late, so his hands attempted to form the hand seals for a wood release technique. He could feel the distortion of the air around his head. He felt pain pierce his head and his skin tugged tightly. As dots started to appear in his vision due to a lack of oxygen, Sika said in his mind, "Madara is using some warping technique that we've previously detected him using. He is taking his time with it." He seemed to delight in lengthening the duration of the effect as a form of torture. In his mind, Naruto wished Sika would stop yelling. This was the end, then. He hadn't even survived. A flash passed across his field of vision. As blood spurted onto Naruto's face, Madara let out a cry. Naruto was suddenly a few feet away from Madara when he was grabbed and found himself gasping for air. The person who had saved him immediately shoved him to the back. Naruto's eyes widened when he looked up and saw Kakashi Hataki's exhausted and blood-stained face. Blood gushed from a huge cut on the hand that had strangled Naruto as Madara gave them a homicidal glare. Even as he faced Madara, Kakashi grimly whispered to Naruto, "You owed me an explanation if we survive this." The seasoned ninja swiftly assumed a fighting stance. Madara roared, "You pests will die," as he disappeared from his position and materialized at Kakashi's side, his hands outstretched. A shadow materialized between Kakashi and Madara, slashing at Madara's outstretched hands as Naruto screamed and attempted to push Kakashi away. When Naruto saw the elderly Hokage standing in front of him, glaring angrily at Madara, he gasped in relief. "That's enough," Sarutobi declared icily as hundreds of Konoha ninjas started to appear, encircling Madara from all sides. "You have no way to run, Madara Uchiha. Surrender." Madara gave a chilling laugh after glancing around him in a deranged rage. Madara said icily, "It will take more than a group of weak leaf ninjas to bring me down." He then glared at Naruto as though threatening to exact revenge. Then, to the surprise of the newcomers, Madara's physical form started to quickly deteriorate and eventually disappeared. After a moment of shock, Old Man Hokage and the militia looked at the empty spot Madara had been standing in. Then, the Hokage ordered the militia to divide into 5-man squads and started searching the village and the Uchiha clan compound for Madara and any traitor Uchihas. Old Man Hokage turned and gave Kakashi a thank you look for his effort before glaring at Naruto sternly as the militia dispersed and fled in enormous swirls of body flicker techniques. As he started to examine the strangulation marks on Naruto's neck, Old Man Hokage yelled, "What are you doing here, Naruto?" with concern in his eyes. Naruto paused, glancing at Kakashi, who was gazing back at him composedly. He froze for a moment, only now realizing that Kakashi Hatake was aware of his deceit and might soon figure out that he was the Eye and that he was descended from the Wood Release family. It would be challenging to tell the Hokage his true identity because he couldn't do so without disclosing Sika's existence. There was an issue because Sika had stated clearly at the beginning of their relationship that she would cut off all communication with Naruto if he disclosed the Federation's existence or its secrets to the people of this world. In his mind, Sika said, "I think we'll need to eliminate some false information in order to maintain the identity of the Eye. I've spun up a possible red herring to divert the Hokage's attention ever since I detected the arrival of the militia. However, we'll need to secure the cooperation of Kakashi Hatake. This is what you should say." Naruto sniffed and looked at Old Man Hokage, tears starting to well up in his eyes. His body trembled as though under intense strain, and then he bounded forward, embracing the Hokage. Naruto raised his head to face the Hokage and said, "I was so scared," without turning to face Kakashi, who was standing at the side with an eyebrow raised. "Let this work, please." As he started to spin the cover Sika had prepared for him, Naruto prayed. The words seemed to catch in Naruto's throat as he uttered, "Old man. I was so scared." Sarutobi gives the child a comforting arm rest. Sarutobi was aware that protecting the village was his top priority because a strong S-rank ninja and his Uchiha associates were at large there. However, given that he served as Konoha's demon container, Naruto's role in this issue also requires investigation. He had some free time now that his ninja militia was out searching and protecting the village, so he decided to find out what in the world had brought Naruto so close to Madara Uchiha. Sarutobi had sensed that something odd was happening, and somehow Naruto was at the center of it, from Kakashi's defensive position in front of him when Sarutobi had arrived with his militia to the shocked expression the copy eye ninja had given the boy when he began crying into his arms. However, Naruto's subsequent remarks destroyed Sarutobi's seeming composure and authority. With a terrified expression in his eyes, Naruto raised his head to gaze up at Sarutobi and uttered, "I am the student of the Eye and I think teacher is in trouble." Sarutobi exclaimed in surprise, "What?" before he could stop himself. Kakashi's eyes widened in surprise next to them. Kakashi, a member of the Anbu elite, was aware of the mystery surrounding the Eye. Sarutobi fought to maintain control while pondering how the enigmatic infiltration ninja had been able to covertly train Naruto. It was an amazing accomplishment because the Eye had escaped detection by the Anbu sent to check on Naruto, not to mention Sarutobi's frequent look.in, to use his spying technique to keep an eye on Naruto's well-being. Sarutobi stared at Naruto intently and inhaled deeply to relax. "Naruto, Answer me truthfully. How long have the eye been training you? And why are you here? Naruto paused before saying, He came to me 1+ year ago, a few months after the meteor showers. He told me all about my parents. I know my heritage. It is something that teacher told me must be kept a secret until the time is right. Squeezing his eyes, Sarutobi gasped. The mystery of why the eye's training with Naruto went unnoticed was partially resolved when it became apparent that the eye had been in Konoha for a lot longer than anyone had anticipated. The eye most likely had months of planning and preparation behind him by the time he made his formal debut in Konoha. Furthermore, Naruto had learned the identities of his parents from the eye. When Naruto reached adulthood, Sarutobi had planned to reveal his parentage to him. When Naruto had matured enough to refrain from bragging to others about this SS rank secret, Sarutobi had been terrified that other ninja villages would find out that Naruto was the son of the infamous and legendary Yellow Flash. If that secret were revealed, he could only imagine how many assassins would be pursuing Naruto. But judging by the boy in front of him now, it appeared that he had misjudged Naruto's level of maturity. The boy had been aware of his parents for months, and Sarutobi would not have known Naruto knew if he had never told him tonight. From a youngster who was desperate for attention to one who could protect a secret, Naruto had undergone significant change. Sarutobi was completely unaware of Naruto's upbringing. Sarutobi was sorry that he had not given the boy he was supposed to be supervising more attention. He told me he owed my parents a great debt and he was going to take me in as his student. He said he would teach me everything he knew. His only requirement was that I never tell anyone that I was being taught by him. He never told me his name, just to call him teacher, and every time he appeared before me, he wears a different appearance. I never knew what he looked like, Naruto said as he sniffed and rubbed his eyes filled with tears. He is strict. But he always treat me fairly. He was always there for me. A few months ago, he said he was going to help Konoha by gathering news and information that would protect the village. Our training became less and less frequent, but teacher always kept me updated on what was happening. He told me how he became the eye. Then tonight, teacher appeared and told me that he was going to do something that might get him killed. He told me about Madara Uchiha, how the Uchiha clan was under attack. He said he was going to try to stop Madara, to buy time for the village militia to mobilize. Naruto replied with his eyes looking glazed. Teacher specialized in bloodline research and infiltration techniques. He confided to me once that offensively he was barely the level of a Jonin. He was more of a research ninja. He was outmatched against someone of Madara's level. I begged him to let me help him. He had done a lot for me. In the very beginning, he had given me the wood release bloodline which allowed me to tap into the Kyuubi's chakra safely. I thought it would be enough for me to help. The eye gave you the wood release bloodline? You mean the eye successfully developed a method to implant the legendary bloodline into another? Kakashi was taken aback. Sarutobi stood motionless next to him, his thoughts racing back to a time when one of his students, a strong Konoha ninja, had experimented with bloodline research on defenseless bystanders. Sarutobi's biggest regret was Orochimaru, who was the prodigy of his generation. Since the eye had previously disclosed that he was a missing nin, it's possible that his research is what led to his current hunt. Furthermore, Naruto was aware that he was the nine-tailed fox's container. It was never Sarutobi's intention for Naruto to learn of his burden at such a young age. For a brief moment, he felt the burden of all the years he had spent keeping the secret from Naruto. He wished Minato was still alive during these moments. With a frown on his forehead, Sarutobi said harshly, "You really have the wood release bloodline?" With his hands flashing into multiple hand seals, Naruto nodded. Large vines of green roots grew to wall height in front of them, and the ground below them exploded. Sarutobi's mouth tightened into a white line as he simply stared at the scene in silence. The world had been home to bloodline thieves. It was known that certain bloodlines, particularly the Sharingan, which are dojutsus, could be implanted in other people. One of the few bloodlines that was difficult to implant was wood release. Out of the 90.2 deaths of other innocent subjects, Orochimaru had only succeeded in implanting the wood release bloodline into a young boy. He didn't know how the eye had given Naruto the bloodline, but to put his charge in such danger, there was no forgiveness. He was going to give the eye a hard time the next time he saw him. If the eye was still alive, that is. Teacher gave me the bloodline when we first started training together. I have a few months training in it. I can pull out all the tailed beast chakra I want. I was also taught the shadow clone technique a few months back, so teacher agreed to let me help from a distance by spamming shadow clones to distract Madara. I also knew some special infiltration techniques of teachers which would change my appearance without chakra and hide me from sight. I thought it would keep me safe, Naruto admitted, nervously biting his lips as he towards Kakashi. I lost all contact with teacher right after we saved this big brother here. I did not want to run, so I stayed here and keep creating shadow clones to enter the fight. Then Madara found me and big brother saved me. And then you came. Teacher told me before I enter the fight that if something happened to him I should come to you for help. Old man Hokage, I don't know what to do. Please, save teacher. As Naruto's words faltered, Sarutobi gazed at his terrified and exhausted face. Sarutobi's heart was still blazing with rage at the eye for implanting the wood-release bloodline into Naruto and secretly training him behind his back. He was also upset that Naruto had been forced into such a risky circumstance by an unidentified missing nin. All of this is insignificant, though, given that Naruto had unrestricted access to the nine-tailed beast's chakra. The situation must be closely watched to make sure the Kyuubi won't have an opportunity to break out of its captivity. Sarutobi was unaware of the level of danger Naruto had faced as a result of his involvement with Madara, but it was not time to give the boy a thorough debriefing. If Naruto's claim was accurate, the eye had vanished at some point following his confrontation with Madara. Sarutobi felt a sense of duty to the enigmatic ninja after everything the eye had done for Konoha. If something truly happened to the eye, Sarutobi had to find out what had happened, help this enigmatic ninja in any way he could, and then give him a hard time. However, first, Sarutobi leaned down to examine Naruto and said, "Naruto, lift your shirt. Since you know of the Kyuubi, I presume you were also told of the dead demon consuming seal on your belly?" With hesitation, Naruto raised his shirt and remarked, "Teacher mentioned it in passing. It keeps the Kyuubi sealed." Sarutobi glared at Naruto's abdomen and said, "Good, I need you to mold some chakra right now, like when you use it to prepare your jutsus." Naruto nodded while maintaining a focused expression. When the dead demon consuming seal on Naruto's abdomen materialized, Sarutobi felt the chakra gushing out of his body. When Sarutobi tried to use his chakra, he tensed because it was the first time he had been close to Naruto since he had joined the academy a year prior. It was a familiar chakra signature. It resembled the signature he had detected from the Eye's clone. In order to alert him to Madara's invasion, the clone had presumably body flickered into his room. Sarutobi could easily recognize the chakra signature, which was a breath of pure air and the feel of moist, richly turned earth. While it was not unheard of, it was uncommon for different people to have the same chakra signature. Chakra signatures are heavily influenced by the personalities and chakra affinities of the individual. The fact that Naruto and the Eye have the same chakra signature indicates that they shared similar chakra affinities and perspectives. Sarutobi ignored the chakra signature's resemblance and focused on the dead demon-consuming seal that materialized on Naruto's abdomen. Sarutobi was relieved to discover that the seal was in perfect condition. There would be no quick escape for the Kyuubi from Naruto. Given that history described how the first Hokage suppressed the tailed beasts using his wood-release bloodline, Naruto may be more secure against Kyuubi manipulations now that he possesses that potent bloodline. Sarutobi turned to face the battle. Weary ninja and said, "You can put down your shirt now, Naruto. Nothing seems wrong with the seal. Thanks for calming an elderly man's mind. Kakashi, can you bring Naruto to the hospital? I want both of you to be checked out." Even though Kakashi was severely injured, he couldn't ask Naruto to go out on his own without a guard, especially not tonight. Sarutobi had limited time and had to join the search himself. With a defiant expression, Naruto added, "Old man. I am fine, there's no need for me to go to the hospital. I heal fast, and I am sure the doctors have their hands full tonight." Sarutobi started to say, "Nevertheless I would," but stopped when he noticed Naruto's beseeching expression. Naruto, looking exhausted, said, "Please, old man, I just want to have a good rest. I can go for a checkup tomorrow." With a sigh, Sarutobi glanced at Naruto briefly. Naruto appeared to be unharmed aside from the strangle marks on his neck, which were already starting to go away. Since he was young, Naruto has always had a quick recovery rate. The Kyuubi's chakra flowing through him was partly to blame. He was also descended from the main branch of the Uzumaki clan, which has a strong lineage of longevity and excellent health. Despite the fact that the bloodline had never come from Naruto, his regeneration and general health were above average because he was descended from the Uzumaki. Sarutobi was struggling to resist giving in to the child's request, and Naruto had not sustained any injuries that would have killed him. With a nod from the white ninja with spiked hair, Sarutobi said, "Very well, Kakashi, are you well enough to bring Naruto back home?" Dryly, Kakashi said, "I'll live. I can bring Naruto home before going to the hospital." "Good. Naruto, I want you to go home right now and rest. You'll have a health examination tomorrow. In the meantime, I will get the ninjas to look for any signs of the Eye." Sarutobi replied with a stern expression. Tomorrow I will get a ninja to bring you to the tower and I will need you to tell me everything you know and have done with the eye. For now just get a good night's sleep. You've done well Naruto, I am proud of you. After giving the boy a reassuring embrace, Sarutobi nodded to Kakashi. Before he started to jump over the eastern wall of Uchiha and toward the surrounding rooftops, the copy eye ninja advanced and held Naruto against his chest. Sarutobi grimly narrowed his eyes as he watched them leave. Tomorrow, he would resolve Naruto's relationship with the eye. For the time being, he had to keep the village safe, ensure that Madara and the traitor Uchiha ninjas didn't hurt Konoha or the Uchiha clans anymore, and locate the missing eye. Madara appeared on a treetop, miles away from Konoha, after a faint blur in the air. His anger consumed him. It was the nine-tailed beast's dreaded demon container that had prevented him from destroying the Uchiha clan, let alone Konoha. A lot of his plans had to be modified. The first priority was to deal with Konoha's young demon container before he grew too strong to pose a threat. Madara felt multiple chakra signatures emanating from Konoha's direction just as he was ready to teleport away. Madara turned around, his hands already flashing into the hand seals of an earth-release ninjutsu, thinking it was Konoha ninjas pursuing him, but then he saw the three bloodied and pale-faced ninjas behind him. When the three ninjas saw Madara, one of them exclaimed in surprise, "Madara-sama." Madara sneered, recognizing the three ninjas in front of him as members of the Uchiha group he had liberated from the Anbu Tower and who had subsequently consented to help him destroy the Uchiha clan. It appears that these three Uchiha chose to escape rather than be pursued by the Konoha ninjas. Despite their cowardly behavior, they were still alive. Additionally, all three of the ninjas have Sharingan eyes, which makes them a useful tool Madara may employ in the future. Madara stepped forward to them and remarked, "I see the three of you are still alive. You have a choice. Join me, or be hunted down by Konoha as missing nins." One of the Uchiha ninja growled at him, "In my opinion, you are the one who initially led us to our current predicament." The ninja who had spoken let out a strangled cry as a kunai pierced his throat, followed by a flash of light. Helplessly, he crawled at his neck and gurgled out blood. His body swayed as death took him, and he fell to the ground below. Madara gave the two surviving ninjas a chilly smile and remarked, "I guess if you are not joining me, then I do not have any use for you. I might as well dispose of you now in case you become a problem for me in the future." With haste, the Uchiha who introduced himself as Mozu exclaimed, "Wait Madara-sama. Fukura's words are not mine. I Mozu Uchiha agreed to join you." The other ninja next to him nodded his head rapidly as well. With a quick leap forward, Madara grabbed each man's arm and said, "Good, then let us be off before the Konoha rats came looking for us." Madara teleported the three Uchiha away, causing the air around them to ripple. Only the dead Uchiha on the ground below signaled their passing in the silence of the forest. As he ran across the rooftops holding Naruto, Kakashi looked down at him and remarked, "So, the eye trained you. Since he was the one that gave you the wood release bloodline, I presume then that the eye also had the same bloodline as well?" "Yes," Naruto said drowsily, supporting Sika's cover as he held onto Kakashi as he ran across Konoha. "Wait, do you know where I live?" Kakashi stated plainly, "I have my ways, I know where I am going." In silence, the two of them carried on with their journey. Several groups of Konoha ninjas were patrolling the streets and rooftops in front of them. Kakashi must have been recognized by the patrol teams because they were permitted to proceed unhindered. Kakashi didn't say anything more for a few seconds. "The ones that saved me from Madara. It was the eye as well as shadow clones from the both of you?" Without looking into Kakashi's eyes, Naruto said, "Yes, but the ones that saved you are mostly composed of teacher's shadow clones. My clones were only supposed to act as distraction." Naruto felt bad about the lie he was spreading. "I don't know which clones are yours and which are the eyes, but you and your clones held off someone of Madara Uchiha caliber for long enough till help arrived. That spoke highly of your combat abilities." Kakashi was quiet in his praise. "Your abilities are possibly already above Genin and Chunin level." Naruto attempted to downplay his achievement by saying, "Being able to pull out the Kyuubi's chakra safely was what allows me to spam shadow clones in the fight. Konoha's ninjas would not want to probe too closely into his fighting prowess." As he leapt to the roof of the apartment building where Naruto was staying, Kakashi remarked, "Quantity does have a quality of its own. But your skills have to be at a certain level to be able to hold off Madara Uchiha for even a while." He nodded to Naruto and put him down. "I will leave you here. Have a good rest tonight. I am sure the Hokage will have a lot of questions for you tomorrow." Naruto thanked the white-haired ninja, who turned and hurried across the rooftops, saying, "I will. Thank you for seeing me back home." Naruto entered his apartment after descending the stairs slowly. He slumped against the nearest chair in his living room as he shut the door. He felt exhausted and drained both mentally and physically. My scanning range no longer includes Kakashi Hitaki. He is most likely on his way to the hospital to receive medical attention for his wounds. He heard Sika speak in his mind. Naruto closed his eyes wearily and remarked, "Good. I think Kakashi and Old Man Hokage bought the story you come up with." Since Hokage was Naruto's closest relative to a grandfather, he disliked lying to him. However, the ninjas and village council would look into why an 8-year-old without a clan could do the things he could if he did not lie and was found to be the eye. By coercing Naruto into disclosing his secrets against his will or by using a mind scan, which Naruto knew the Yamanaka clan was capable of, they might be able to find out Sika's existence. There was a significant likelihood that Sika would be taken or stolen once the village council learned about it, which would have required the AI to enter lockdown in order to keep Federation secrets hidden. A straightforward deception is sufficient to prevent those involved from closely examining your reason for being at the Uchiha clan compound. If the cover you've given the Hokage spreads, people in the know will soon see you and the Eye as distinct entities, further safeguarding your secret identity. As it stands, your identity as the Eye is safe. Sika disclosed. As Sika went on, Naruto was unable to come up with much of a response beyond a weary grunt. In addition to providing a rationale for your current bloodline, disclosing information about the Eye's successful bloodline implantation technique also protects your future in the event that you need to try bloodline changes. After a few minutes of silence, Naruto remarked, "Your cover is good, Sika, but I am worried about what Old Man Hokage will ask me tomorrow. And they're also Madara Uchiha." As Sika increased his capacity to heal his wounds, there was a tingling sensation. Naruto made himself stop scratching at his wounds and relax. From the way Madara attacked me directly, he seemed to view me as a threat and he had a way to see past our cloak. I saw his eyes when he was trying to kill me. It feels like he wants to tear me apart. It appeared that Madara was also aware of your identity based on the battle clone's recorded scans. He repeatedly exposed himself to them as the Fox Brat and Konoha's demon container during the conflict with the clones. He also mentioned that he wanted to murder you. As it confirmed Naruto's suspicions, Sika took note. "I've conducted a number of simulations in preparation for tomorrow's encounter with the Hokage, and I would advise you on how to respond to his inquiries without giving too much away. I will trust you with the details for tomorrow's meeting, Sika. I am too tired to think. A legendary ninja is now out for my blood and the best I can do is hold him off for half an hour." Naruto sighed. "I need to get stronger. We need to be prepared. I've started to examine the entire battle that was captured on tape and will determine the participants' strengths and weaknesses. It will enable us to develop skills or strategies to defeat Madara if he resurfaces in the future," Sika said. Naruto said, his eyes hard, "Thanks, Sika. Increase my training schedule. I need to get more powerful fast. The next time I go up against a powerful enemy, I want to do more than to hold off the enemy before nearly ending up dead. I want to be able to actually defend myself against enemy ninjas on equal grounds. I understand, but it's unfair to use Madara Uchiha as a barometer for your abilities. You already surpass the majority of Konoha's Chunin ninjas. One of your shortcomings, which regrettably stems from your solitary training endeavors, is your lack of battle awareness. Even when you train with your clones, they're either used for technique mastery or one-on-one sparring. For Special Federation field agents, I have outlined a new plan based on the Wild Hunt training protocol. However, the training regimen is harsh and demanding, and there is a significant risk of injury. We will incorporate it into your training schedule if you give your approval," Sika said. "I also want to make a recommendation. Now would be a good time to build clones for information gathering, if you have the stamina to do so. In order to avoid any surprises when we meet with the Hokage tomorrow, we must have a solid understanding of the current state of affairs in the village, which is on high alert." Naruto said wearily as he made the hand seal for the shadow clone technique, "I can't say no to that, can I? We're going to need information about the current outlook of the village now more than ever." 20 clones appeared, crammed into the tiny apartment, and clouds of smoke billowed around him. Naruto commanded, "Go." As the clones vanished, a gleam of light appeared. His apartment's door opened, and then a powerful gust of wind slammed it shut. Sasuke sat in the hard, rigid chair and stared at his mother, who was sleeping on the bed in front of him and was pale-faced. She had barely been saved by the doctors. By the time she got to the hospital, she was already harmed by the poison in her body. As he emerged from the emergency room, one of the doctors said, "Uchiha-san." He had a tired, haggard face. Nurses and orderlies surrounded him, hurrying to other operating rooms with bleeding and injured patients. With gloomy eyes, the doctor stopped in front of Sasuke's father. "We were able to save Makoto's life. but discovering the counter for the poison in her body took too much time. "We're sorry, but Makoto's spine is severely damaged by the corrosive in her body. Immobilized." Later, his father told him. His mother was paralyzed for a while. However, Sasuke was now old enough that he was unaffected by those sugar-coated lies. He understood the doctor's words. His mom would never be able to walk again. Additionally, Sasuke was aware that something was amiss when a group of Uchiha arrived at the hospital room demanding to see Fugaku. Fugaku had shut the door to the room and left Sasuke next to his wife. Outside, there had been a lot of shouting, then there was quiet. His dad never came back during the night. Sasuke attempted to leave the room to ask the nurses what was happening, but they had no time for him because the hospital was bustling with activity. He witnessed numerous family members being carried through the hospital's front door, bleeding, dying, and hurt. Although one of his aunts, who was tending to a bandaged arm, asked him to return and stay with his mother, he was largely disregarded. He had overheard fragments of dialogue. Sasuke had asked where his brother Itachi was, but he had received no response, indicating that Itachi was presumably in the hospital. Additionally, he had overheard heated arguments among some distant uncles in the clans, demanding that the Uchiha clan be called to elect a new clan head. Sasuke had finally returned to the room where his mother was staying, feeling scared, disoriented, and alone. Sasuke remained vigilant throughout the night, resting on the chair next to his mother's bed. Tears were barely contained as they hovered at the edges of his eyes. However, he refused to cry because he was a man. So much suffering, so much pain, so much blood. Sasuke was still unaware of what had transpired. He came to a conclusion in his impressionable young mind as to why some of his distant relatives had attacked them and seriously hurt his mother. Since he was descended from a powerful ninja clan, he had always had a great regard for ninjas. However, now, he had made the decision not to train as a ninja in order to murder and inflict pain. Instead, he would develop into a ninja with the strength to defend the people he cares about. And he would figure out how to get his mother well enough to walk again. He was sitting in his office in Root's hideout, deep in the catacombs beneath Konoha. Danzo was aware that Konoha's militia was desperately searching for Madara and the Uchiha rebels who had attacked the Anbu Tower and the Uchiha clan above the catacombs, on the streets of Konoha still shrouded in nighttime darkness. Uchiha Madara. Danzo gave a disgusted shake of his head. Konoha had been attacked by a living legend. Danzo had believed for years that the Third's rule had made Konoha softer. However, recent occurrences made Danzo reconsider. Minutes after the Third had raised an alarm and summoned the militia, his operatives had come back to him with reports. Danzo was worried about how quickly Sarutobi had organized the militia after reading the reports. According to the first Hokage's directive, which Danzo had always disapproved of, the militia was placed in reserve during times of peace. Since none of the reserves were on active duty around the clock, mobilizing them would take at least 30 minutes. While the militia was being organized, the Anbus were supposed to handle any threats. The Anbus were to be used in emergency situations to deter the threat until the militia could arrive. It seems that Madara was aware of the directive. His first target was the Anbu Tower, where over 80% of the active duty Anbus were gravely wounded and buried beneath debris. It would have been too late by the time the militia received the news and was organized. Nevertheless, Sarutobi somehow had the insight to position two Anbus teams around the Uchiha clan's compound. The timing of the Anbu Tower attack and Sarutobi's militia mobilization had been communicated to Danzo by his agent. The time difference was only 5 minutes. A few minutes after the Anbu Tower attack, Sarutobi somehow learned about it. It never occurred to Danzo that Sarutobi would have such a strong information network. It seemed to Danzo that the Third had been playing the nice old man to fool everyone. Then there were the enigmatic wood release users scurrying among the Anbu Tower's debris, attempting to rescue everyone who was trapped inside. After closely examining those wood release users, one of his agents concluded that they were all clones of the same individual. Someone with some healing skills and expertise in the bloodline itself. Who were those clones of, was the question. No other users of the wood release bloodline now came out of the Senju clan, as they had long declared. A young man who had survived Orochimaru's bloodline experiments years prior was the only known user of wood release in the village. Because of the strength of his lineage, he was protected by the Anbu. The council members kept a close eye on the young man, and Danzo had meticulously documented his development. However, the reports never mentioned how strong the young man was to produce so many shadow clones. This implied that there might be a new user of the wood release bloodline in Konoha, unless the reports were inaccurate. Danzo had also become aware of an infiltration ninja working for Sarutobi as a result of recent events. The eye were the only two words he knew. His agent's questions concerning this enigmatic ninja were met with silence. The eye was unknown to the majority of the Anbus. Those who appeared to be aware were silent and fervently devoted to the third. Such a strong infiltration ninja was unknown to the other Konoha Jonins and Chunins. Danzo was starting to think that Sarutobi might have been secretly training a team of specialized task force members, similar to what he was doing with Root. He had already dispatched his operatives to conduct additional research. Sarutobi was turning out to be a more cunning foe than he had initially believed, if his suspicions were correct. Danzo looked up as one of his Root agents entered through the open door. Danzo said, "Hyo, what do you have for me?" Together with a few other Root agents, he had dispatched Hyo on a specific mission. It was bad news that he had come back sooner than Danzo had anticipated. Hyo stated calmly, "My team could only manage to harvest 5 Uchiha bodies with their Sharingan intact. Unfortunately, the presence of the militia and the return of many of the Uchiha to their clan compound forced me to call off any further search for suitable bodies." Gritting his teeth, Danzo wished he had more time before the Uchihas came back. Danzo had always wanted to implement a plan, and the attack on the Uchiha clan compound had presented an opportunity. Unfortunately, he would have to settle for what he had, even though his plan called for having more than 5 pairs of Sharingan eyes. The voice was emotionless as Hyo stated, "There's another matter, Danzo-sama. I was in the area when the Hokage arrived with his militia in a face-off against Madara Uchiha. Konoha's demon container was in the vicinity as well." "What?" Danzo inquired as his mind shifted to Konoha's demon container, Naruto Uzumaki. He had a file on the boy and was well aware of who he was. He had unsuccessfully attempted to use the council to gain control of the boy from Sarutobi over the years. If properly trained, the boy would have been a formidable weapon for Konoha, but Sarutobi would not have it. The third had made it clear in the council meetings that Naruto Uzumaki should be given a normal life. That is, a life as normal as a demon container could hope to lead in a ninja village. Regretfully, Sarutobi succeeded in persuading the village elders to support him. When questioned, Homura only admitted that they owed the boy the same amount, which baffled Danzo. One of his biggest supporters was Homura, but for some reason, Sarutobi, Homura, and Kaharu had shut down any decisions that would have a negative impact on the boy's health because of Naruto Uzumaki. However, Danzo suspected the boy's parents were involved. In honor of the village's previous alliance with the now deceased Uzumaki clan, 2 known full-blooded Uzumaki members lived in Konoha, despite the fact that the Uzumaki name was frequently used for orphans in the community. Prior to Naruto, both were also the demon containers. 8 years ago, Kushina Uzumaki, the Kyuubi demon container, perished in the Nine Tails attack. During her pregnancy, a strong ninja had taken the Kyuubi from her. The now deceased 4th Hokage was the child's father, and it is said that she and her newborn perished in the assault. It was understandable why the third had been so outspoken in defending the boy if Naruto was the offspring of that union. However, Danzo was compelled to remain silent because Sarutobi, Homura, and Kaharu adamantly refused to validate his suspicions that the 4th child was still alive. Apparently Naruto Uzumaki was the secret student of the Eye, a fact which seemed even the third was unaware was. I managed to listen in to their conversations after the third sent the militia away. I was unfortunately able to catch only bits of their conversation as I do not dare to get any more closer to the third while he was on high alert. Hyo disclosed, now with Danzo's full focus. The Eye is more than a mere infiltrator. It seemed he was a bloodline researcher. He somehow granted Naruto Uzumaki the wood-release bloodline, a fact that the third also does not seem to have any knowledge of until told. Really? A chilly smile stretched across Danzo's face as his eyes glowed in the shadows. Tell me all that you've heard. It appeared that he had finally struck gold. All he needed to do now was figure out how to use this new knowledge to his advantage and acquire Naruto Uzumaki, who had grown to be a far more significant chess piece in the larger game of power. By the time Sarutobi staggered toward his office and power symbol, the Hokage Tower, it was daybreak. The night had been spent in search. None of the militia had found any evidence of the Eye. Despite the fact that they had saved many injured people, the hospital staff was working overtime, and every room was full of patients. However, Sarutobi questioned whether the militia would have recognized him even if they had located him, given that nobody was aware of his appearance. Sarutobi had to hope that the Eye was still alive and that he would get his chance to appropriately reprimand the Eye for what he had done to Naruto. He paused at what he saw as he opened his office door. Sitting next to Danzo were Homura and Kaharu, who turned to face him with gloomy eyes. Sarutobi knew that Danzo's arrogant demeanor and triumphant gaze would only lead to trouble. Sarutobi was primarily drawn to the white-haired, emotionless, and silent figure that stood in front of Danzo and the village elders. In a tone that Sarutobi knew did not sit well with him, Kaharu remarked, "It seemed that you've been hiding information from us." Danzo had been letting us know of certain information he had discovered. Who is the Eye Sarutobi? And what has he done to Naruto Uzumaki? I am giving you a chance to explain, Sarutobi. Kakashi, who had been standing erect and silent in front of the two elders, said grimly, "Hokage-sama, I have not answered any of their questions." His meaning was obvious. None of the information that Danzo and the elders currently possessed had been revealed by Kakashi. Homura yelled, glaring sharply at the white-haired ninja in front of him, "Hold your tongue, Kakashi. Your loyalty to the third serves you well, but your silence answered our questions more than you thought." Sarutobi, attempting to ignore the gloomy glances his former teammates were giving him, asked, "And what exactly was this information Danzo told you about the Eye and Naruto?" Before revealing anything that could have a negative effect on him or Naruto, he needed to know what they knew. Without admiration, Kaharu remarked, "I know your tricks, Sarutobi." She gave Sarutobi a menacing glare. "What Danzo told us will be revealed after you've given us a clear explanation on who is the Eye and why you've been so lax as to let him train Naruto Uzumaki in secret. What intentions does he have towards the boy? And what is this I've heard about bloodline research?" Euonus answers Sarutobi. Sarutobi's stiff stance eased. Danzo and his teammates didn't appear to have realized that the Eye wasn't a Konoha ninja. Fortunately, the Anbus in the know must have kept the secret. If Kaharu and Homura had discovered that Sarutobi had been getting unconventional assistance from a rogue nin who had also been training Naruto Uzumaki and giving the boy the wood-release bloodline, they would have gone crazy. Sarutobi's conversation with Naruto must have been overheard by Danzo's spy. He would need to mitigate the damage and manipulate events to his advantage. If the Eye turned out to be a missing ninja who had been training and trying other things with Naruto Uzumaki without the Hokage's knowledge, the consequences would be severe. Sarutobi sighed loudly, trying to appear like a harmless old man who was tired, and said, "Very well. I shall explain." Danzo appeared to take pleasure in seeing a defeated looking Sarutobi, but Kaharu's expression told him she did not buy the act. Sarutobi suppressed his desire to give the elderly warhawk a glare. After he worked things out with Homura and Kaharu, the man who had been torn in his side for decades decided it was time to take action before the situation escalated and was brought before the village council. Not only would Naruto suffer if it were revealed that he had been trained by a missing nin, but his own reputation and authority over the village would also be in jeopardy. Sarutobi responded, spinning up a plausible lie to cover his hide in case Kaharu and Homura discovered the truth. "I presume you knew that much of our information network outside Konoha was managed by Jiraiya? Throughout the years he had been training a prodigy in secret. Because of the sensitivity and nature of what he did, the prodigy's identity was kept secret, known only by a few. I publicly denied knowledge of him, or that he was a Konoha nin. To gain Jiraiya's cooperation and ensure that their accounts align, he would need to make sure to write him a letter. Actually, since Madara was now fighting Konoha, it might be best to call up his former pupil and possibly Tsunade as well." Sarutobi continued straight-faced, without displaying any signs of lying through his teeth. In recent months, this prodigy of Jiraiya returned to Konoha to recuperate after a mission gone wrong. He became known as the Eye. I started employing his service in the village while he recovered, but denied knowledge of him. The few Anbus in the know thought he was a missing nin. I gave him too much of a free rein. Unfortunately, he was friends with Naruto's parents and he felt that he owed them a debt. Homura appeared pale, and Kaharu gasped. Other than Sarutobi, the two village elders were the only people in the village who were aware of Naruto's ancestry. Only two other people outside the village were aware of this secret. Jiraiya was aware of this since Tsunade had been the first to assess Naruto's condition in the initial days following Kyuubi's sealing, and Minato had been his pupil. But when Kaharu and Homura reacted, Danzo narrowed his eyes at them. Sarutobi moved quickly on, avoiding Danzo's focus. He was positive that Danzo had his suspicions, but he did not want that man to delve too far into Naruto's lineage. "The Eye secretly trained Naruto without my knowledge. Unfortunately, the nature of his work gave him access to unrestricted materials. He had been conducting bloodline research without my knowledge and had granted Naruto the wood-release bloodline. Naruto truly have the bloodline which I had seen with my own eyes." Sarutobi observed the gloomy expressions of Homura Kaharu as he spoke. Danzo must have told them this because they did not appear shocked by the revelation. This implied that the conversation between Danzo and Naruto must have constituted the entirety of the information that he possessed. He was headed in the right direction. The Eye and Naruto were the ones that bought time for the village militia to arrive when Madara launched his attack last night. I have asked Naruto to give me a full debrief of what he had done with the Eye after he had some rest. Sarutobi kept going until Homura stopped him. With a voice that broke no arguments, Homura remarked, "Why don't you call the eye in directly? I for one would want some direct answers out of him. He had conducted bloodline experiments on a young boy for heaven's sake. Even if it was successful. And the eye and young Naruto facing off against the legendary Madara Uchiha. How far has the boy's training progressed? These are facts that we need to know." Sarutobi clenched his jaw. Sarutobi had also wondered how much power the young boy now possessed after seeing how Naruto had used shadow clones to hold Madara off. When he had a chance to give it some serious thought, the fact that Naruto had survived more than a few minutes against Madara was a testament to his current fighting prowess. When he had time, he had planned to question Kakashi about what he had witnessed. Previously, he had discovered Danzo and the village elders seated in his office, requesting answers from him. Sarutobi cautiously started to rewrite the story to his advantage, saying, "I am afraid the eye had gone missing after the battle with Madara. It was possible he might already be dead. As for Naruto's capabilities, Kakashi, perhaps you would give a debrief of the fight against Madara Uchiha. I am also curious about how well Naruto did." Danzo's voice argued forcefully, "The boy now has the wood-release bloodline. With the Kyuubi inside him he would become Konoha's most powerful weapon." "No." A harsh voice from the third said, "I will not have Naruto turned into just a weapon to be used." With a resigned tone, Homura stated, "The boy has been trained, he has a powerful bloodline and bears the Kyuubi inside him. He had faced off Madara and survived through a certain mastery of the wood-release bloodline if the report of what Kakashi gave us of the battle was accurate. I would much rather he became a ninja now and come under the village's control than running around Konoha freely. We need to gauge his skills, decide where to place him in Konoha's ninja corps," said Kaharu. Kakashi's description of the battle he witnessed is quite frankly unbelievable. "We need to know how much of the battle was the eye's work and how much was Naruto. I suspect that the boy had to be at least of Chunin level if he was able to hold off Madara after the battle where the eye supposedly disappeared. He could be given a special field promotion due to this unique circumstance. Of course, some of the truths would have to be revealed to the village council, but I can see things going well for us if we phrase things the right way." The third, who had given up the fight now that the two village elders were actively opposing his suggestion, said in a tired voice, "Very well, Naruto will be tested and given a field promotion. However, his history with the eye is an S-rank secret. I do not want information about the eye to be spread to the public. We'll have to come up with a plausible story if Naruto's promotion is revealed to the council. I have an idea of what we should tell the public, but first, let us discuss how to test young Naruto," Homura said. "He would have to be caught unaware, of course, so we can see his true potential." N11 snorted as S11 used the mental link with N11 to replay the conversation it was recording. During Boss's much needed rest, the two clones were assigned to the Hokage Tower. Undoubtedly, they had never anticipated overhearing a clandestine gathering between the village elders and the Hokage to discuss Boss. N11 shook his head and said, "Lies within lies. Looks like old man Hokage is really invested in the identity he had spun up for the eye now. I have a possible analysis of why the third Hokage lied about the eye's identity," S11 replied. "It is highly possible that admitting he had help from a missing nin who he had no control of would have made him look weak in front of the village elders and council. By saying the eye was a Konoha ninja, however, he secured his power base instead." N11 said, shaking his head, "Politics. I am just glad Boss's Sika had the foresight to request for more clones to pick up information while he slept. Now we can prepare for whatever surprises the village elders would have for us come the new day. Now that a measure of Boss's skills are revealed, it would be for the best if Boss stick to using those skills during the field test the village elders are planning," S11 said with a mental calculation. "Boss should seem powerful, but not too powerful. And I can see the benefits of Boss becoming a ninja, even a Chunin ranked 1. Ninjas are considered legal adults, no matter how young they are." N11 nodded, "Ah. I see your point. Becoming a ninja would certainly give us more freedom and might even hasten some of Boss's pet projects and plans. And now that it is known that Boss could create shadow clones, not all clones would have to hide from sight anymore," stated S11. It appeared that things were finally improving as N11 smiled and his eyes brightened. A large portion of the Uchiha compound was covered in ashes and dying fires. Even after the bodies had been taken away for preparations, the smell of death persisted, along with the burned and destroyed buildings and the blood-soaked ground. The muffled, agonized cries of mothers mourning their now dead children, of husbands lamenting the loss of their families, and of the motionless bodies of those whose eyes gazed blindly into the distance, unable to deal with their losses following last night's attack, were scattered throughout the compound. However, A somber gathering of Uchiha men and women gathered near the center of the compound, a landscape of overturned rock and earth with tangled vegetation, where it was rumored that Madara was brought to a halt by unknown senjus with wood-release bloodlines and courageous Konoha ninjas. Among the remaining members of the Uchiha clan's uninjured ninja forces, there were mutterings of anger. While some were making an effort to calm the crowd, nearly everyone's attention was on the ruling that was taking place in front of them. The few senior Uchiha ninjas who remained were putting Fugaku, the disgraced clan head of Uchiha, on trial. The attack last night had killed or wounded the majority of the Uchiha ninjas. Following the attack, the senior ninjas who survived established a war council and came to a unanimous decision. The most senior ninja present, Inoden, glared at Fugaku, who was standing in front of the assembled crowd. Fugaku Uchiha, for your cowardly actions last night, for your abandonment of your duties during the attack led by Madara Uchiha and the traitors, this council declared you stripped off your titles and position as clan head. As the mutterings among the assembled ninjas became louder, Inoden added, only the actions of your son, once prodigy of the clan, saved you and your family from exile. He alone of all the Uchiha went up against Madara and survived. His bravery in delaying Madara cost him an arm. The clan owed him a blood debt which we would repay by allowing your family to retain your family home in the compound. Following the judgment's conclusion, Inoden turned away from Fugaku, and the majority of the council members publicly shunned the man. Ignoring Fugaku behind him, Inoden turned to face the assembled crowd, his expression frozen in a gloomy resolution. After much deliberation, the council decided that the most powerful ninja in the Uchiha clan would be chosen as the new clan head of Uchiha, with the council serving as his mentor. This decision was made because Madara Uchiha is a threat to the world and wants to destroy the clan. Our clan needs a strong leader now more than ever, especially after we have lost so many members. In the ensuing silence, Inoden stated, we have decided to appoint Shisui Uchiha as the new clan head due to his leadership abilities and actions during the attack on the clan. Itachi Uchiha will be assigned to the clan as an advisor and council member. Shisui Uchiha of the body flicker will be the one entrusted with destroying Madara and bringing him to justice after we take the oath of vengeance. Does anyone agree with our decision? Disregarded by the assembled clansmen, the silent and humiliated Fugaku Uchiha turned and left without turning around, and the roar of approval that immediately erupted broke the tense atmosphere that hung over the group. Wearing a black outfit and a face mask that concealed his face, Hayama Shirakumo pondered inwardly why he had been selected for this task and why the third Hokage and the village elders had wanted him to test Naruto Uzumaki in secret. After all, it was hardly fair to pit an 8-year-old against a Jonin, although there had been rumors circulating the ninja core that the demon container in question had been discovered near the Uchiha compound, facing Madara Uchiha yesterday night. It seemed that the ninja militia had arrived at the edge of the Uchiha compound to discover Madara attempting to attack Kakashi Hitaki, who was defending the boy. When the runners had announced the attack to the public in the morning, there had been a huge outcry from the civilians, especially since the village had been placed under military lockdown for the next few foreseeable days. The fact that the Uchiha clan, one of the major and more powerful clans in the village, had suffered a 50% casualty rate in death and injury was enough to alarm everyone. Konoha was still rocking from the attack by the legendary missing nin. Nearly all of the Konoha ninjas were on edge following the massive attack on the Uchiha clan. The fact that Hayama was selected to test Naruto Uzumaki so soon after the attack, when nearly all of the Konoha ninjas were called up for rotation guard duties, meant that Naruto Uzumaki likely played a significant part in yesterday's attack. The fact that a Jonin-level ninja was selected to test the boy raised suspicions among the village elders and the Hokage that the boy must possess a certain level of ninja skills, which was puzzling given that the boy had no ninja training. Nevertheless, it supported the rumor that the boy would actually face Madara Uchiha, though it was unclear how the demon container ended up there or who trained the boy. When Naruto Uzumaki revealed that he knew the basic chakra exercises, it made things easier, and they swiftly made their way across the rooftops of the various buildings, with Hayama leading the way. A sleepy blonde boy answered the door to the demon container's apartment, going inside to change when he was informed that the Hokage wanted to see him. 20 minutes into the trip, Hayama led the boy into training area 34, where he was aware that the village elders and the third were hiding far away to watch the test. Why are we in this place? Turning to the masked ninja who had halted, Naruto Uzumaki scowled and said, I thought we're going to the Hokage's tower. Old man Hokage, where are you? This is the place where you shall die, demon, Hayama said cryptically, rolling his eyes inwardly at the cheesy script the village elders had created for him. There's no Hokage here to see you. He had his sword strapped to his back, but it was probably too dangerous to use it against a child. With a kunai in hand, Hayama charged forward, cautiously adjusting his pace to give the boy enough time to escape, assuming he was at least as strong as the Hokage and the village elders suspected. Hayama had no idea how skilled the boy was, and he had no intention of accidentally killing a small child. As a result, he was taken aback when Naruto Uzumaki leapt backwards with unidentified hand seals, and Hayama tensed, bracing himself for a ninjutsu attack, when the boy simply vanished. For an instant, Hayama gazed at the vacant area, his mouth wide open behind his face mask. The boy had not used a body flicker technique or even a replacement technique. Instead, he had just disappeared. Hayama grinned while his eyes narrowed, taking careful note of his surroundings. It appeared that Naruto Uzumaki had at least some ninja training, and he undoubtedly had some tricks up his sleeve that Hayama had never seen before. Hayama, who was neither a new Chunin nor a Jonin, knew the attack for what it was, especially when the entire ninja corp was filled with first-hand reports from Uchihas who had seen unknown senjus with wood-release bloodlines saving them yesterday night. He immediately leapt away as soon as he felt a pulse of chakra to his left, just as an eruption of slashing greenery appeared at the spot where he had been standing just seconds before. Naruto Uzumaki somehow shared the same ancestry as wood release. Despite his loyalty to Konoha and the village, Hayama could not help but wonder what games the Hokage and the elders of Konoha were playing right now. After all, why in the name of the Rakudo Sennin did the village demon container have the revered wood release bloodline? Hayama growled as he glared in the direction where he was certain the third Hokage and the village elders were hidden. His only comfort was that he knew he had done the right thing, otherwise, the Uchiha traitors would have killed more innocents. But even then, even when it was his clones that killed those traitors in defense of innocence, he still felt uneasy. He was awakened by the bloodied faces of those he had killed the night before, and he jerked out of his bed in cold sweat, still seeing their accusing eyes as they stared at him in death. Distracted by memories of the clone he sent to the Hokage Tower, the clone dispelled and passed what he knew to Naruto, who instinctively began to make the had seals of the shadow clone technique as he absorbed the memories. 50+ clones seemed to disappear from his apartment, replacing the night clones that were dispelling throughout Konoha. Before a ninja knocked on his door to collect him to see the Hokage, he had managed to eat some breakfast and had been in awe of what the Hokage and the village elders had in store for him. Hayama Shirakumo, a Konoha Jonin, is the target. Sika was explaining everything to Naruto as he followed the masked ninja across the rooftop. Naruto was already aware of what he would be up against this morning because he had spent part of the night with the village elders and old man Hokage discussing how to test him. With the Naruto clone and Sika scanning the specifics of the plan, Naruto was aware of and ready for the test he would be facing. As it started listing the abilities of the ninja sent to test Naruto, Sika disclosed that Hayama Shirakumo, who was listed in the bingo books as a highly experienced Jonin with a specialty in Kenjutsu, wind, and water-related attacks, had killed several Iwa ninjas during the Third Shinobi War and was known by the Iwa ninjas as Deathblade. A ninja would be sent to entice me to a training ground, where he would force me into an attack by posing as an enemy nin. Naruto reflected inwardly as he went over the memories from his Hokage Tower clone, even as he listened to Sika droning on in his mind. The memories were the reason why, despite the fact that he appeared to be following the masked ninja at all times, he was actually ready to engage in combat at the first sign of trouble. Sika interrupted Naruto's thoughts to say, "I would now go over the abilities you should display in the battle once more. The Hokage was already aware of your wood release abilities and your proficiency with the shadow clone technique, so there was no reason to conceal your knowledge of the body flicker technique, which was regarded as a common Chunin level technique. It would also be pointless to use the weaker versions of your fire release and symbology techniques and highlight your extensive skill sets. I've already developed the necessary fake hand seals for your various light ninjutsu, which, at the very least, would make an interesting diversion against your opponent and would fit the cover you've told the Hokage, where you've been trained by an infiltration ninja. It's important to remember that your light techniques were seen by Kakashi and Itachi, so there's no point in hiding them. The goal at this point is to give a fight that is impressive enough to earn a ninja rank without drawing too much unnecessary attention to the full power that you possess. It would be wise to find a reasonable way to lose this fight so that you do not appear too powerful. Of course, you should moderate your fight. Based on your clone's combat performance yesterday night, you should be able to go up against most Jonins and Chunins without any problems. Okay, then, I'll follow your plan." Naruto stopped as Hayama, the masked ninja, stopped in a training ground clearing. "However, I have a request of you, Sika. I want to fight on my own merits during the test. You can assist me when I need to use the light ninjutsu techniques, but I want to be in charge of tactics and battlefield maneuvers. I want to see if I can come up with a battle plan and take on an experienced ninja without your help, on my own." "I'll do what you say. I'll do what you want," Sika said plainly. With a look of childish concern, Naruto widened his eyes as he looked at the masked ninja, who turned to face him. Naruto looked up, concealing a smile of anticipation, knowing that he was probably going to be tested soon. "Why are we in this place?" With a purposeful frown of bewilderment, Naruto questioned. "I thought we were heading to the Hokage's tower." "Old man Hokage, where are you?" With his body hunched forward and a kunai drawn, the masked ninja responded in a menacing voice, "There's no Hokage here to see you." Had Naruto not realized that this was all a ruse, he might have truly thought the man had bad intentions toward him. The masked ninja held up the kunai in his hand and went on, "This is the place where you shall die, demon." When Hayama rushed forward with his kunai, Naruto instantly jumped backwards, his eyes scanning his surroundings as he quickly devised a plan of attack and defense. He did not want to draw too much attention to his combat skills and capabilities, at least not unless he was forced to, so the first thing he did was to hide and get out of the masked ninja's range. His small body simply was not built for that kind of fight, and his only advantages were his ninjutsu and his enormous chakra reserves. As he vanished from physical view, Naruto was already creating the seals for the body flicker technique, swiftly moving to a new location in the clearing, and his hands flicked into the hand seals that Sika had come up for the cloaking technique. Perched atop a nearby tree, Naruto gazed down at the clearing where Hayama had stiffened and was cautiously scanning the area for Naruto's presence. A fresh set of seals flashed into Naruto's hands. Release of wood. Death Whip's Sarutobi sat on a log in a different clearing, away from Training Area 34, with Homura, Kaharu, and Danzo surrounding him. He had his crystal ball in the middle, where he was using his telescope technique to spy on the fight between Naruto and Hayama. The crystal ball reflected an image of a clearing with a masked Hayama brandishing his sword and avoiding a series of wood release attacks. The image had to be focused on Hayama because young Naruto had simply disappeared from view as soon as the test began. As Hayama used a wind technique to cut through a huge tangle of deadly slashing vine whips, Homura remarked in surprise, "Amazing. Naruto Uzumaki is definitely holding up well against a superior opponent, especially someone of Hayama's caliber." Hayama stood in the middle of the battlefield, dead vegetation all around him, trying to find his invisible opponent. "I can now see how a young boy was able to hold out against someone of Madara's strength," Homura said. "Since he didn't even appear on the crystal ball, it is clear that his invisibility jutsu is not a genjutsu. I didn't anticipate anything like this when Kakashi said that Naruto appeared to have a way of vanishing from view. It's some kind of ninjutsu." With a note of surprise and gratitude in her voice, Kaharu remarked, "Who is this Jiraiya prodigy that taught Naruto? He's a type we've never seen before that truly makes him disappear from view. Does Jiraiya know about his invisibility technique?" Knowing for sure that Jiraiya was unaware of such a technique, Sarutobi said smoothly, "I am afraid not." His eyes narrowed as he watched the fight between Hayama and an invisible Naruto. Not even a transformation technique, a well-known fusion of genjutsu and ninjutsu, could make a ninja simply vanish. A true invisibility technique would allow a skilled infiltration ninja to enter any place and observe what was happening undetected. However, if Madara had been able to pierce through it and reach Naruto, then that technique must have flaws. Sarutobi now had a hint of how the Eye must have obtained all of his valuable intelligence on the village and the Uchiha clan. Sarutobi recalled the report that Kakashi had just provided them with a few hours prior. "After being saved by the Naruto clone, I then managed to flee the battlefield. I had to go for assistance on foot because I had run out of chakra by that point. When I got to the eastern walls of the Uchiha compound, I saw Madara Uchiha suddenly emerge on the wall in front of me and punch what appeared to be empty air. Some kind of sharp noise had been heard, and the spot where Madara had struck had broken into fragments of light. Naruto had shown up. He had a way of slipping out of view, it seemed. A method that Madara had conquered. With proof of Naruto's invisibility technique now in front of him, the primary query was how Madara had managed to penetrate the technique, which appeared undetectable to Sarutobi as he peered into the crystal. Hayama's body flickered away, the image on the crystal ball changed to project his new position, and he looked around him wearily before his entire posture froze. Loud curses erupted from the crystal ball as Hayama began to swear after barely escaping torment in a wooden cage that materialized. With the crystal ball projecting his voice, Hayama abruptly said, "That's a pretty impressive technique, demon. But I didn't become a Jonin without receiving at least a little sensor training," he said. "I'm proficient enough to at least detect the output of your chakras." The image of the crystal ball changed as Hayama appeared in a new position, slashing at what appeared to be an empty spot. Or at least it had seemed to be an empty spot until the very air where Hayama had slashed shattered into shards of light, revealing a shocked-looking Naruto. Hayama punched the boy who puffed into smoke, and the boy vanished as massive green vines slashed at the spot he had been at. Danzo said, Impressive. Sarutobi's lips tightened at the raptor. Like expression in Danzo's eyes, but Danzo was too focused on the battle to notice the glare. A ninjutsu that makes one disappear from sight. A great weapon in itself, he added. Its only drawback is that the ninja's chakra signature could be used to defeat the technique. The demon container will be nearly invisible if he receives training in silent skills, particularly how to conceal one's chakra signature. The more polite term for assassin skills was silent skills. Assassins were regarded as the elite killers of any ninja village, and Konoha had its share of them. Assassins received harsher training than other ninjas because their primary goal was to become true killers rather than soldiers for hire, as most ninjas were. However, Sarutobi would not allow Danzo to attempt to turn the fourth child into a cold-blooded killer. For starters, a child of Naruto's age would be negatively impacted by that mindset. It was already bad enough that he had to add Naruto to the ninja corps before he was an adult. Even if Naruto was made a Konoha ninja, Sarutobi intended to keep the boy close to him and not allow him to go on any missions that specifically seek out a target to kill, at least not until he was 12 years old, the age at which the majority of hidden villages considered their children to be adults. Sarutobi was not alone in being incensed at Danzo's remarks. Koharu curtly stated, "This is a time of peace. This isn't the Mist Village Danzo. Nor is Konoha at war. Konoha doesn't have to begin training kid killers. Genin's minimum age is now 10. In Naruto's case, we are already going beyond the bounds of the law." Homura said thoughtfully, "But I can see merit in Danzo's suggestions. Naruto will undoubtedly benefit from receiving training in hiding his chakra signature, but not in the area of teaching a child the silent skills, of course. Isn't the Eye a formidable infiltration ninja? He might not have taught Naruto all of his abilities. The Eye was not found during the militia's search the night before. He may be dead already. Naruto can carry on his teacher's legacy if he receives specialized infiltration training." Danzo sarcastically remarked, but as Homura stated, Naruto possesses some of the techniques of a powerful infiltration ninja, so it will be in Konoha's interest to build up on those skills. Perhaps if Sarutobi is willing to give us a more complete description of the Eye other than some vague details, we might be able to have more eyes looking around, to see if the Eye had actually perished after going up against Madara. Getting Naruto to teach the other ninjas his invisibility technique will also benefit Konoha. Sarutobi stated unequivocally, "No ninja is required to reveal their secret techniques to others, especially in hidden villages like ours. Whether Naruto wishes to share his techniques is up to him. However, based on my observations, Naruto most certainly possesses the strength and strategy of a Chunin. If it weren't for his youth and unquestionably inexperience in combat, I would have elevated him to Special Jonin based on his wood release specialization." Looking at the image on the crystal ball, Koharu said, "That's true. Hayama had made his own shadow clones and used his sword to unleash a powerful wind release technique, causing the invisible shadow clones around him to disappear into smoke. The battle was ended by a lone figure of Naruto lying on the grass a short distance from Hayama and his clones. I think it's time to meet Hayama and young Naruto, Koharu said. It appeared that the test was over. I agreed with Sarutobi's viewpoint. Given his abilities and skills, Naruto ought to be promoted to Chunin. Because of his age, he may lack combat experience and mental maturity, but we could work on those things. As Danzo merely nodded, Homura remarked, I agree with Koharu as well. It's just a matter of finding Naruto the right teacher to give him a slightly more accelerated training program. There is potential in that boy. Sarutobi cancelled the telescope technique and stood up, followed by Danzo and the village elders. Then with all of you in agreement, I suppose it is time to greet our newest addition to Konoha's ninja corps. Their hands flashed into the hand seals for the body flicker technique, and they disappeared in a whirlwind. Hayama had been able to identify him and his clones even when they were wearing cloaks, just as Madara and some of the Uchiha traitor ninjas he had faced the night before had done. He had kept the fight to 50 shadow clones and had not used Sika to blind Hayama as a handicap, but even then, it was a testament to Hayama's abilities that the Jonin was able to defeat all of them without Naruto having to purposefully let his defenses down. Naruto panted as he lay on the soft grass where he had been blasted away by Hayama's wind slash technique. It was understandable that those traitor ninjas had not been fighting at their best, and the few Uchiha traitor Jonins and Chunins his clones had faced the night before had been tortured for a day in the Anbu Tower. But even so, the fact that Hayama was able to defeat Naruto and his 50 clones, even as they were using chakra intensive techniques, demonstrated the difference in skill between Naruto and the Jonin. As Naruto pushed himself off the grass, Sika said, the Hokage and the elders are on their way. They should be here, now. The elderly figures of the village elders and Danzo also shimmered into view, and Naruto looked up as old man Hokage appeared in front of him and Hayama, who was still wearing his mask. Old man Hokage's face had a worried expression. As he messed up his face, Naruto thought wearily, time to act like a normal 8-year-old. Old man Hokage. What's happening? I was attacked by the man. I apologize, it was a test, Naruto. We aimed to test your abilities in an actual combat scenario. The Hokage knelt down in front of Naruto, straightened his clothes, and checked on him. Please forgive this old man. Are you hurt anywhere, Naruto? Did you sustain any injuries? But why am I being tested? Naruto said, puffing out his chest indignantly. I am fine. And the instructor? Have you located the teacher? With a hesitant expression, old man Hokage said, we're still looking for Naruto. When I hear anything new, I'll let you know. These individuals are the village elders in the interim. We wanted to thank you for your assistance during the attack after talking about what you did last night. We put you to the test for that reason. Reward? Naruto's eyes widened as he asked. When old man Hokage stood up solemnly and took something from his robes, he said, yes, reward. Naruto Uzumaki. You receive a field promotion with the consent of the village elders and the authority granted to me as the Hokage. Because of what you did to Madara Uchiha last night, you will now be considered a Chunin of Konoha. When the Hokage put the Konoha headband on Naruto's head, Hayama, who had been standing off to the side, tensed up in shock and his eyes widened in shock. Now I'm a Chunin. With a look of amazement on his face, Naruto exclaimed, but what about the academy? A Jonin will take you as an apprentice after you graduate from the academy. All of the essential ninja knowledge will be taught to you. Old man Hokage stated plainly, you will be answerable only to me or the village elders until your education is finished, and you will not be participating in any Chunin level duties unless requested. We can carry on this discussion in my office, Naruto. I need to give you some information about your special promotion. As head of the Hyuga clan, one of Konoha's current prominent clans, Hiyashi took his seat in the village council room, 2 seats away from the Hokage seat, with Kaharu, one of the village elders, and the current Senju acting clan head, a Jonin who served with Konoha's hunter Nins, seated between them. Homura, the second village elder, sat next to the third, while 2 new faces occupied the Uchiha clan head position. Hiyashi recognized Shisui Uchiha, one of the 2 prodigies born to the Uchiha clan in recent generations, who had even earned a spot in other hidden villages' bingo books as Shisui of the Body Flicker, famous for his near-instantaneous body flicker technique. The fact that he now occupied the Uchiha clan seat must indicate that the political climate within the clan had changed. Inoden Uchiha, a Jonin whom Hiyashi had once classified at the Ninja Academy, stood rigidly behind Shisui, who appeared to be serving as an advisor in the current meeting. It was not surprising that the third called a council meeting to discuss the night's attack after things had calmed down, especially since all the clans and civilians were on edge in case Madara Uchiha suddenly reappeared and attacked them next. By this point, the news of the attack on the Anbu Tower and the Uchiha clan by one of the most notorious ninja in Konoha history had spread like wildfire throughout the village, which was also under lockdown. Hiyashi already had some of his clan members scouting the village for information about the current state of affairs, but a briefing by the third would likely provide more information than he could learn, and the meeting's conclusion would also affect his decision to increase or decrease patrols in his clan compound. Danzo, a well-known ninja with a council seat, followed the third and the 2 village elders into the council room. The 4 then took their designated positions, with the third checking the table to make sure all the council members were there before nodding to the 2 Anbu by the door. The 2 Anbu then left the room, shutting the door behind them, as a chakra bubble encircled the space from the outside, protecting it from any eavesdropping attempts. As the room fell silent and everyone turned to face the village chief, the third said solemnly, I am glad that all of you came once you've received my summons. I am sure by now all of you have heard about last night's attack, he said. The majority of the clan heads likely have a good idea of what was happening because many ninjas from Konoha's various clans participated in the militia counterattack. We've gathered all of the Uchiha traitors who took part in the attack last night, to cut right to the chase. They would later be detained for questioning and trial at an undisclosed location. Regretfully, Madara Uchiha had managed to get away from Konoha. He had not been located despite the patrols and reserve militia being called in to conduct a thorough search of the village. However, he's Madara Uchiha. How can we really be sure he is still not in the village? A terrified civilian council member said, referring to the man who, according to history, repeatedly fought the first to a draw. We are unable to be absolutely certain, Kaharu said, her voice waspish, and she glared at the council member. That's why Konoha is under lockdown and the village has heavy patrols. Right now, our only options are to stay alert and recover from our losses. How strong are our ninjas? A lot of the Anbu were killed or injured after the attack on the Anbu Tower, So a large portion of our Jonins are out of action, inquired Sume of the Inazuka clan. Would you please inform the council of the village's strength at this time, Homura? Homura nodded and opened a folder in front of him as the third sighed. During the attack, 39% of our Anbu task force was inside the tower. 7 people lost their lives in the attack, 18 were seriously hurt, and 15 will be well enough to return to active duty within a week. With the exception of those on border patrols, our active strength in Konoha consists of the elites, militia, and reserves. The current strength of the Jonin is 158, the Chunin is 457, and the Genin is 676. Due to significant Uchiha casualties following the attack last night, the Konoha military police force is currently 75% staffed by elites and militia ninjas. We're recalling all of our ninjas currently out on missions. They should arrive back within a week, bringing up our numbers. As the council fell into chaos, Hiyashi sat in silence, watching and listening. Some were inquiring as to whether the third would restore wartime customs for Konoha. How Madara Uchiha survived for so long was a question raised by some. A lot of people wanted to know how the third would handle the possibility of a cage-level ninja seeking Konoha's blood. Hiyashi's regard for the elderly ninja grew as he observed the third skillfully fielding and navigating the questions. But when Kaharu ended the questioning, he straightened. The looks in the third's and the village elder's eyes made his hackles stand up. Danzo was also uneasy because of the sparkle in his eyes, wondering what Kaharu would say next. With a grim expression on her lips, Kaharu said, proceeding to the last item for today's meeting. As you are already aware, Shibi Aburame and Kakashi Hitaki's teams were assigned to watch the Uchiha clan following the arrest of the Uchiha dissidents. Although they suffered significant losses, these two teams played a crucial role in saving many Uchiha lives. Despite his foresight, the third stationed a third secret team close to the Uchiha clan during the assault. The origin of the would release bloodline ninja rumors, who had rescued members of the Uchiha clan during the assault. That came from this third team. But in order to accomplish that, I would have to divulge a village secret. The majority of you were probably aware of Orochimaru's past. Along with Jiraiya and Tsunade, he was one of the 3 Sanins. After our ninja forces found out that he was using abducted children for illicit experiments, he was exiled from Konoha. The village was informed that only 1 child survived the kidnapping, according to the official narrative. In actuality, Orochimaru had also abducted a Chunin who had survived. In order to give others the would release bloodline, he was experimenting with implanting the first Hokage's genes, which, I'm sure, most of you were already aware of. Orochimaru is a bloodline thief, nothing more. The acting head of the Senju clan, Natsu, erupted in rage. Who are the Chunin who made it through the experiment? Slow down, Natsu. As the assembled council members erupted in shocked and accusing cries at the news, Kaharu said fiercely, let me finish first before you all ask your questions. The Chunin lived, as I mentioned. To better control his lineage, he received training in wood release techniques. The young man was personally taken in by Jiraiya, who also gave him instruction. He turned into a Jonin. Before another person with the bloodline was discovered, it was believed that he was one of the 2 wood release users in Konoha, of course. When Natsu Senju attempted to speak again, Kaharu glared at him, and she spoke again in a loud voice that echoed throughout the room, interrupting his words. This new user of the wood release bloodline was a youngster. He was thought to be descended from a distant line of Senju. The third adopted this child, who was an orphan. The only Jonin in Konoha with the wood release bloodline taught him wood release techniques. The teacher and student team was the third covert team dispatched to monitor the Uchiha clan compound. By using shadow clones, they were able to help rescue people who were being attacked by Uchiha dissidents and those who were trapped beneath the Anbu Tower's debris. They were also able to stop Madara Uchiha until help could arrive. It was thought that the teacher had died in the assault. The pupil made it out alive. Because of his actions, he received a special field promotion to Chunin. The elders, including the third, felt that the remaining wood release users in Konoha could no longer be kept anonymous. He is Naruto Uzumaki. The silence was dead silent. Some of the council members stared at Kaharu in disbelief, their mouths hanging open. And the council room was plunged into chaos. The village demon container has the wood release bloodline. A voice exclaimed incredulously before being drowned out by the cacophonous clamor of subsequent voices. Naruto Uzumaki. If he is really a pure-blooded Uzumaki. The Uzumaki clan, when it still exists, used to be distant cousins to the Senju clan. It's possible he might be descended from a Senju line. The Uchiha clan owed this child a blood debt it can never repay. We request to adopt Naruto Uzumaki into our clan. Outrageous. The wood release bloodline belongs to the Senju clan. That Naruto Uzumaki awakens to the bloodline proves that he is descended from our clan. Hokage-sama. The Senju clan wishes to adopt Naruto Uzumaki and take him back to his real descended clan. But he is the village demon container. He is a danger to all of us. You are just a civilian, so I will forgive you for that slight. What that child has done for the Uchiha clan more than proved his worth to us. Hokage-sama, please let the Uchiha clan repay our debt to the boy. Inoden Uchiha. That child belongs to the Senju clan. You will not fight us over this matter. As S5 relayed to him the scanned conversations taking place in the village council room, N5 remarked dryly, "Man, it's really turning into a shouting match in the council room. There's a 95% probability that Boss will be adopted into a prominent clan. A 100% confirmation that Boss will gain popularity through public announcement of his actions during the attack." Sika said, "I have analyzed the situation. The village elders most probably thought they could bind Boss closer to them by helping him gain goodwill of the villagers. The story they spin up also highlighted the fact that the Hokage and them were on the ball regarding security matters in Konoha. This cover which they wanted you to operate under would gain them serious political points." N5 gave a resigned shake of his head. Being a clone of the boss, he also possesses the memories of the boss, especially the memories of the occasion when the old man Hokage brought him back to the Hokage Tower to be briefed on his secret assignment, with Danzo and the village elders in tow. "Naruto, we know of your tutorage under the eye and what he had done to you. In respect to the third, we'll keep the eye's existence a secret. However, many in the village were already asking about the wood release users that supposedly helped rescue those trapped in the Anbu Tower and under attack in the Uchiha clan. We believed it would not be wise to hide your existence in this situation. There's also the fact that people might question how you became Chunin when your rank becomes official. You would operate under a cover. This cover would be told to the public and you must keep it up at all times. This would be one of your first duty as a Konoha ninja. In order to keep the eye's existence a secret, we can't reveal to public that you gained your wood release bloodline through some artificial experiments. We will tell the public this instead. Listen carefully, Naruto." Following that brief conversation, Old Man Hokage gave Boss another confidential briefing after Danzo and the village elders had left. "Naruto, in order to protect the eye, your teacher, I have to tell the elders that he was a student of a famous Konoha ninja. You must keep this a secret. This is to protect your teacher." N5 remarked angrily, "Manipulative bastards. And that includes Old Man Hokage as well. All of them are just protecting their own interests. I can't believe Old Man Hokage will just follow along with their schemes and pull Boss along. Boss had similarly manipulated things in his own way. It is unfortunately the only way to keep certain things secret. From analysis of the Hokage's actions, he had done all he could to protect the interest of Boss without damaging his own power base." Sika disclosed. The main cause of this massive web of schemes was due to the action of the one named Danzo. He was the one that guided the village elders to a confrontation with the third Hokage. N5 said, "Danzo. What do we know about him? He was the leader of Root, an Anbu faction which the third Hokage disbanded in recent years." Sika responded. "He was a powerful ninja and widely respected. There's talk of making him a village elder, though the notion had not yet come to pass." "Root? What is that?" N5 inquired curiously. As it navigated through the information it had previously scanned from the Konoha archives, Sika stated, "Root was a Konoha Anbu subdivision founded by Danzo. They carried out missions that might be less than respectable, espionage, assassinations, and terrorism to name a few. Certain agents had gone rogue, nearly causing international incidents, and that was what forced the third to shut down the subdivision." "Really? And Danzo's the leader of such an organization. Seems like Boss's instinct was right. This guy need to be watched," N5 grumbled. "A clone is already on standby and will follow Danzo after the council meeting is over," Sika replied. N5 smiled. "I wonder what dirt Boss can dig up this time." By the time the council disbanded, it was getting dark, and a number of members were still gathered outside the Hokage Tower, arguing loudly, and some of them were attempting to stop a brawl from starting. However, N17 ignored them as he left his perch on the roof of Konoha's bank and followed a lone figure that emerged from the Hokage Tower. The figure moved farther into Konoha's warehouse district, which was essentially empty at night. But, concealed beneath the cloak, N17 was confident that he could follow the man without being noticed, closely following him. So when Danzo abruptly disappeared, he was shocked. Then he saw the man again, punching through his cloak directly in front of him. As Danzo struggled his hands behind his back, immobilizing him, N17 let out a cry of alarm. My, what have we here?" Danzo asked, laughing as he peered down at N17's startled expression. It seemed that you are not as innocent as Sarutobi thought. Isn't that right, Naruto Uzumaki? Creeping around in the night. The eye probably taught you more than you had showed Sarutobi. Impressive thinking and training for someone your age. Definitely infiltration ninja material. N17 said nothing. With his hands pushed behind him, he was currently powerless and unable to perform any hand seals. However, Boss would get his memories when he dispelled whatever Danzo was going to do to him. After seeing your little trick this morning, I thought it was prudent to get a sense of my surroundings wherever I go just in case. It was a lucky thing this old Warhawk's instinct remained as sharp as ever. Chakra sensors came in different levels of capabilities, my dear little Naruto. I am one of the rare few that could sense one's chakra even if they were not actively using ninjutsu or genjutsu. Danzo laughed as he pointed to N17's back. You're such a wonderful little specimen. With the proper training, you can become Konoha's most valuable asset. You interest me greatly, boy. I'll have you one way or another. N17 shivered and started to struggle violently at what Danzo had said. The way the older man's hands were pushed behind him, the sparkle in his eyes. God, he was in a pervert's hands. Help, Sika. Danzo looked at N17, who was now writhing wildly in his grasp, and said, still keeping silent Could it be that you're just a shadow clone? N17's eyes were wide with fear. Danzo was blinded by the sudden appearance of a blaze of light in front of his eyes. Danzo let out N17 in shock and pain. N17 quickly took advantage of the situation and his body flickered away. The only thing stopping him from simply dispelling or actually running all the way home was Boss's orders. Instead, the man remained within Sika's scanning range as his body flickered until he was a mile from Danzo. Danzo wouldn't be able to scan him if they were a mile apart, but he didn't know how highly skilled ninjas actually sense other chakra sources. Correct. As Danzo recovered, S17's scan captured his words and sent them straight into N17's brain. That's certainly interesting. Naruto Uzumaki. I will make you my tool, one way or another. N17 followed Danzo a mile away, cold sweat trickling down his brow as dread took hold of his stomach. N17 begs S17 to get Boss to send a replacement soon. I don't want to follow a pervert who likes little boys to wherever he's going. He continued unhindered into the catacombs beneath Konoha. Throughout his journey, he had maintained a steady chakra pulse, monitoring his surroundings for any indications of young Naruto. However, nothing had come up in his chakra scan of his surroundings. The boy had apparently run away long ago. He nodded to the root ninjas patrolling in the shadows, avoiding the traps. His hands swiftly and silently flashed into a number of coded signs, indicating that he wanted the guards to continuously scan their surroundings with their chakras. This was a necessary precaution with Naruto's skills in case he found the root headquarters before Danzo was prepared. The brief test that Danzo had given Naruto Uzumaki earlier showed that despite his youth, he was not a helpless child who could be subdued. The only thing that had been accomplished by spotting Naruto on the way here, apprehending him, and using words to cause the boy's psychological distress was to increase his resistance and stubbornness. Danzo knew that he needed to either break the boy's spirit completely or persuade him to join Root if he wanted Naruto on his side. As Danzo continued to move deeper into the catacombs, he was not startled when a gust of wind blew past him and his dependable ninja, Fu, materialized at his side. In an emotionless voice, Fu stated, "The guards have received your message. Constant chakra scans around the Root headquarters will be kept up constantly." Good. I found a rare jewel in Konoha today, Naruto Uzumaki, who possessed a technique to vanish from sight. The only way to detect him is by sensing his chakra. Danzo grinned thoughtfully. He had tried to tail me tonight. We must make sure that he does not discover headquarters, at least not until I am able to bring him into the fold. In a modest tone, Fu inquired, "You want to hire Naruto Uzumaki?" Danzo laughed and remarked, "Yes, the skills Naruto possessed will be a boon to Root should he use them for our cause. It is too late to cultivate his mind to be loyal to us, but everyone can be broken if their weakness are discovered. I already have plans to break the boy of his dependence and loyalty to the third. Once that is done, it will be easy to get him to become part of Root. But that is a matter for another day. How goes the preparation for tonight?" Fu simply bowed to Danzo and said, "The doctor is ready. The seal masters are standing by. They can begin inking the seals you require anytime. Orochimaru's agent has delivered the solution containing cultivated cells from the body of the first Hokage, as per our arrangement with him. Using the catacomb tunnels, Io met up with the agent outside the village without any problems. The harvested hand from one of the dead Uchiha and the gathered Sharingans have been cleaned, and the necessary sacrifices have been drugged. The procedures can start anytime." Danzo's eyes gleamed as his mouth twisted into a contented smile. Good, set up extra guards. Under no circumstances must the procedures be disturbed once they begin. Tonight will be the night when I will acquire enough power to protect Konoha, and to lead Root to a new future. Fu nodded silently as he hurried after Danzo toward the medical room located deep within Root headquarters. If Sika's most recent scans were to be believed, Danzo was a ruthless and crafty old man who was trying to use some kind of intricate fuinjutsu to seal a carefully cultivated solution of the first Hokage's wood release cells into a hand. N17 wasn't sure if he should be relieved or embarrassed that he wasn't a pedophile after all. At the moment, Danzo and his seal masters were working on intricately designed seal arrays. Even Sika, who had all of his recorded knowledge from Konoha's library, couldn't figure out the design. N17 and S17 only learned about the seal array's function from Danzo's discussions with his subordinates. N17 appeared to be standing next to Danzo, as S17 projected a mental image of the audio and visual scan. Shortly after entering the sealing room, Danzo had ordered the Root Ninja Fu. Once the seals are completed, bring the 5 sacrifices so that I can craft the binding seals on them. I will do that. Fu confirmed. One of the sacrifices is unfortunately putting up quite a fight, using her chakra to burn through the drugs. I may have to administer a double dosage. Will that interfere with the sealing? No, it wouldn't. The seal arrays doesn't care if the life given to power the seal is given willingly or not, or under heavy drugs. It's the life force that's important. Danzo replied with disdain. Who is the sacrifice in question anyway? My orders to you was to find some street kids or orphans to use as sacrifices, children that no one will miss. They shouldn't be able to use their chakra against drugs. It's Yeba Chike's daughter. The agents picked her because she was an orphan with no relatives or guardian in Konoha. They had found her collapsed at the academy training fields last night and thought she would be easily missed in the chaos. No one knew that her old man taught her some tricks before his death. Fu spoke without any emotion. With the added patrols in Konoha, most of the homeless had been housed in the shelters, and the agents had picked what they could find, especially within the short time frame. As he heard Fu's response, Danzo shook his head and said, I am not blaming you, Fu. But to think of the coincidence. Yeba was Konoha's foremost weapon and poison master. It was a great loss to Konoha when he died in that A-rank mission last month. He must have been grooming his daughter after his footsteps. She would probably make a great addition to Root, but right now I need her life more than I need another recruit. The pentagram binding of 5-path seals are the only way to bind a bloodline to a part of the body without attempting those full-blown genetic alterations that Orochimaru is fond of doing, though it is thanks to Orochimaru's continued experiments into bloodlines that we even have a concentrated solution of cells from the first Hokage at all. As he went on, Danzo sneered. The only unfortunate aspect of the seals is that those seals need living sacrifices to power them. To think Minato had these seals and more in his library and he never used them, hoarding them away like some dark secret. He had always been a fool. It is a good thing his whole library of knowledge now resides with us. Root will make better use of his knowledge than he had done. When Fu left the sealing room, he said, It is as you say, Danzo-sama. I have best be on my way to prepare the sacrifices. Give me and the seal masters 2 hours of preparation before sending the sacrifices in. Danzo gave his directive. Once the wood release bloodline is sealed into the hand, bring the doctor in. He'll need to attach the hand to me as soon as the sealing is done. And straight after that, all of the harvested Sharingans must be implanted into the hand. Fu had confirmed, I will see to the preparations. Half an hour had passed since the conversation, and N17 was extremely appreciative that Boss had already dispatched 2 backup clones, both of whom were currently exploring the various areas of the catacombs where the root base was concealed. Naturally, Boss had sent the backup for N17 in the first place because N17 thought Danzo had a sick fetish for small children. They had not anticipated actually running into a minefield. Danzo was grafting the wood release bloodline into a severed hand, which would subsequently be joined to Danzo's body, using some sick method. N17 understood that Danzo would likely be able to access the wood release bloodline through the modified hand, but he was unaware of Danzo's plan to implant the many Sharingans he had harvested into his new hand. N17 was more than a little uneasy about the idea that Danzo had given his agents the order to remove the Sharingan eyes from dead Uchihas. Naturally, N17 and the other clones had immediately dispersed to obtain as much information as they could after they had recovered from the initial shock of discovering that Danzo had a comfortable base tucked away deep within Konoha's catacombs, a base that was inhabited by Danzo's loyal ninjas who were also helping him perform some sickening fuinjutsu techniques. After their Sikas scanned all the data, they sent it back to Boss, who was working feverishly to combine all the information into a coherent whole. They had also been made aware by Danzo's talk with Fu that Danzo might be in possession of their father, the fourth Hokage, who was said to have had a library full of knowledge about Fuinjutsu. None of them knew how the library got hold of Danzo. However, scans thus far have not turned up that purported library anywhere in Root's base. The fact that Root's sentry ninjas were instructed to perform chakra scans of their surroundings added complexity to their tasks. The clones were thoroughly briefed by their respective Sikas about the power and range of sensor ninjas, which was regrettably limited, following the scare Danzo had given N17. Information about sensor ninja training had been included in Sika's scanned library of knowledge, but chakra sensing was the kind of ninja training that varied from person to person, and without knowing the ninja's background in detail, it was hard to determine how skilled a sensor ninja was. Chakra sense training came in two varieties. The more popular chakra echolocation technique involves precisely pulsing one's chakra out of the body and then receiving echoes of those pulses back. This technique was used to train ninjas to interpret the returning chakra pulses into sounds, tastes, smells, sensations, or images. The ninja in question had a significant influence on what the others could sense. This method required a high level of chakra control, and the furthest this kind of ninja could scan in recorded history was 60 meters. The second, more challenging approach was called the chakra web. The idea that everything in life is interconnected served as the basis for its creation. Life force, which is also known as chakra, is present in all sentient living things. Unless one's chakra was highly shielded, chakras were known to resonate with one another and continuously reach out to nearby chakra sources. This kind of leakage was typical among ninjas at the Chunin level, genins, and civilians. The idea that everything in life tends to gravitate toward one another was also widely accepted. It was reported that a chakra webmaster could use all of the senses, taste, touch, hearing, and vision, to detect chakra sources up to 80 meters away. According to legend, those who truly mastered these techniques, the ones who created the chakra web, were able to access the highest thoughts of living things within their chakra range and sense the life force of plants themselves. The chakra web's highest level was close to senjutsu, and records showed that sages were skilled in using and would greatly enhance this technique. Legend has it that the sage of the six paths, because of his connection to nature, was able to use this technique to mentally communicate with anyone within 2 miles. Nonetheless, the number and abilities of senjutsu practitioners declined with each generation. Jiraiya of the Sannin was the only sage known to exist on Konoha, and for the previous few decades, no senjutsu users were found in any other hidden village. The fact that no known sage of the previous few generations could equal the fabled sage of the six paths or any of the first-generation sages in terms of power was another hotly debated topic in ninja history. Naturally, some clans developed their own unique sensor techniques, and there were also known bloodlines that actually improved chakra sensing abilities. In the end, it was a fact that there was almost no way to determine whether a ninja was familiar with any chakra sensing techniques, which method they were familiar with, and what range they should avoid. If sensor ninjas were employing the chakra echolocation technique, S17 had been adjusting its scans to see if it could pick up the chakra pulses they were emitting. Since users of the chakra web method do not need to emit any additional energy signatures, it was impossible to determine whether they were scanning their surroundings for chakra. Danzo had captured N17 for all those numerous reasons. The 3 Naruto clones chose to use the greatest scan range known and maintain a minimum distance of at least 80 meters from any of the root sentry patrolling the base, based on the limited knowledge they had about the chakra sensing abilities of root ninjas. Inside of N17's head, S17 said, "New information from boss." A high-priority message had been sent to the third Hokage regarding our discovery of Root and what Danzo is about to do. Boss is also implementing a rescue plan for the 5 sacrifices. His exact words are, he will not have the lives of 5 innocents on his conscience just to gather more information. Good. N17 wholeheartedly concurred. If he had decided otherwise, I would have intervened by myself. But he is aware that the moment Danzo is aware of what is happening, he might try to flee. S17 responded to N17's query by saying, yes, that is why more clones are on the way to implement the second part of his plans. The layout of the catacombs has been mapped, and Danzo is going to find out shortly that all of the alternate tunnels out of the root base are going to mysteriously collapse, save for the one tunnel where the main force will be arriving through. It will take a large amount of earth release techniques just to dig out of the block-ins that Boss had in mind. Boss is also planning to set up a wide varieties of traps in those blocked tunnels, to maximize the chance of the main force capturing the root ninjas alive. N17 asked inquisitively, that's good, but what main force are you talking about? I am referring to the ninjas that the third Hokage is gathering now, stated S17. The third had received the message, and he is not pleased at all. Dusk had already fallen. After the tense council meeting that had just concluded an hour ago, Sarutobi knew he should be going home to rest. Add in the fact that he had only slept for a few hours the previous 2 days due to the capture of the Uchiha dissidents, the arrival of Madara Uchiha, who had freed and gathered them to attack the Uchiha clan, the ensuing rescue, the village's lockdown, and the entire situation with the council regarding Naruto's fate. Sarutobi had to acknowledge that he was experiencing every aspect of his 65 years at that precise moment. 2 of the most powerful clans in Konoha fought for guardianship of Naruto as a result of Koharu's brilliant play of the council regarding the boy's purported past. Whether the boy realized it or not, Naruto would become even more indebted to the village elders as a result of the goodwill he was certain to receive from the people of Konoha after the council members informed them of his actions. Additionally, it was a surefire method of keeping Naruto from betraying them again. After all, Naruto would immediately forfeit any prestige he would soon be gaining from Konoha if he revealed the lies of the village elders. Sarutobi occasionally cursed the influence that his former teammates, the village elders, had over him. The cages were the primary authority in the majority of hidden villages. Only in the event of a majority council vote against the cage's decisions could they be overturned. Made up of individuals the cages could trust, the village elders' positions functioned as pure advisory roles to the cages. At a council meeting, each of them could cast 2 votes, which was equal to the number of votes held by a clan head. However, Sarutobi's relationship with his former teammates was a little more nuanced. In their capacity as village elders, Koharu and Homura were able to virtually observe any meeting that Sarutobi was supposed to lead. Additionally, they are entitled to view all of the materials in Konoha's archives, including those pertaining to S-rank missions. In essence, it meant that they could not be kept in the dark about very many things. Given that both Koharu and Homura were highly esteemed ninjas in their own right and that Koharu had numerous civilian contacts because her family was a powerful banker, it was clear that the 2 of them had considerable clout with both clan chiefs and civilian council members. If they so desired, the 2 of them could influence any council decisions in their favor, and he had to be especially cautious when interacting with his former teammates. Sarutobi would have taken action sooner if he had a means of keeping Naruto out of the village elders' plots. However, there was very little he could do about Naruto because the elders were united against any decisions he made, unless he told the entire council what the Eye had done to Naruto. In a way, it was better for everyone to believe that Naruto had the wood-release bloodline from birth than to discover that he had only acquired it through a phony experiment. Being called a bloodline thief would only exacerbate the child's already existing stigma as Konoha's demon container. Sarutobi's resentful thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. The door opened, revealing one of his Anbu on duty, and he steadied himself. With a scroll on his desk, the eagle masked Anbu strode forward and declared, the Fire Feudal Lord had sent a message. After waiting for the Anbu to depart, Sarutobi nodded and said, thank you. Return to your duties. He then picked up the scroll and opened it. Shortly after dawn, he had sent a scroll about Madara's attack on Konoha to the feudal lord of Fire Country. Because of the connections between hidden villages and their elemental nations, the hidden villages are figuratively subject to their respective feudal lords. In reality, though, the feudal lords played a more supporting role for the hidden villages that were affiliated with them. The hidden villages received employment, revenue, and trade from the feudal lords. The hidden villages' ninjas make their living as formidable front-line combatants during times of conflict. As he read the scroll, Sarutobi was ready, ignoring the Fire Lord's flowery proses that suggested the feudal lord was disappointed in Sarutobi for failing to capture Madara. Given that Madara had gotten away, the feudal lord now faced a threat and significant inconvenience from the renegade ninja. Sarutobi snorted at the thinly veiled statement that Fire Country's soldiers would be better equipped to deal with Madara than Konoha ninjas. Fire Country is thus informed of the unfortunate attack of the rogue nin, Madara Uchiha, on the Uchiha clan. The Fire Lord sends his regret that so many of his valued Uchiha subjects had perished in the attack, and agree with the Hokage of Konoha that the whole country should be put on alert. The full military might of Fire Country will be notified of the presence of this rogue ninja. Rest assured that the thousands of soldiers in Fire Country's military will not let Madara Uchiha pass unharmed if found. Sarutobi rolled his eyes and shook his head at the Fire Lord's haughty tendency to write his scrolls in the third person. Even though the Fire Lord was a conceited jerk, Sarutobi had to show him some respect because he was the head of Fire Country, in charge of a sizable army, and wealthy. When it comes to military power, the majority of the elemental nations have tens of thousands of soldiers and ninjas. However, this number could be further subdivided into the military forces of the elemental countries and the ninja forces of the hidden villages. The total number of ninjas in a major hidden village used to be over 2,000 before the Third Shinobi World War. but now it is just over 1,000. Whether they were samurai, pure foot soldiers, or chakra trained specialists, the different feudal lords, on the other hand, possessed a military force of thousands. Many common ninja techniques could be purchased or sold in the major cities, and chakra usage was not exactly a secret in the elemental countries. Ninjas from the hidden villages were sent to teach the soldiers in the elemental countries how to use chakra and other more popular ninja techniques. This was one of the common clauses in the treaties between the hidden villages and the elemental countries. The potent secret ninja skills and bloodlines that each hidden village possessed are what really give them their military prowess. The feudal lords, the bulwark of the elemental nation during wartime, treated the ninjas of a hidden village like super soldiers. However, during a conflict, the thousands of regular chakra users who make up the elemental country's military would act as auxiliary forces. In times of peace, the ninjas of the hidden villages in the elemental countries were effectively countered by the chakra users in the feudal lords' armies, despite the fact that their commonplace ninja techniques typically only allow them to reach genin or chunin level. This was one of the occasions when numbers would still take precedence over qualities. Because of this extra defense, no hidden village would ever consider eliminating a feudal lord and seizing both his nation and fortune. Any hidden village that tried it would have to pay a hefty price. The hidden village would lose a great number of people even if the elemental nation's military force was unable to defeat them. Not to mention that if a hidden village dared to interfere with the established order of power, the nearby feudal lords would unite to deal with it. Only during the Shinobi World Wars was the full military power of an elemental nation summoned. The cages would serve as a stand-in military leader for the elemental nation's armed forces as well as the ninjas from their hidden villages. However, everyone was aware that the true allegiance of the military forces of the elemental countries lies with their feudal lords, even in those days when the cages commanded tens of thousands of soldiers. Additionally, even though Sarutobi occasionally wanted to kick the weak lord in the ass, he had to be excruciatingly courteous and respectful to the fire feudal lord. Taking out a piece of paper, Sarutobi started writing a courteous response to the Fire Lord. He started off by carefully explaining that Madara was actually a cage-level ninja and that, if they weren't careful, even the Fire Lord's army's thousands of soldiers might have trouble capturing him. His door was knocked on once more. When the door opened to reveal another Anbu, Sarutobi looked up, his eyes narrowing. When he saw the scroll in the Anbu's hands, he tensed and hurried to his feet. "The cat," masked Anbu said nervously. "Hokage-sama. The eye has passed me a scroll. His messenger asked me to bring it to you directly." Before he could finish, Sarutobi had already taken the scroll from the Anbu. He was still alive because the eye had sent a scroll. It did not bode well for the village that he had more information to send Sarutobi, particularly after the eye had alerted him to Madara's attack and exposed the numerous conspiracies in Konoha. Sarutobi had wondered what other plots the eye had uncovered because the eye had specifically requested that the scroll be delivered to him. Or was the eye going to voice his opinion after learning of the village elder's plots against Naruto? Ultimately, Naruto was accepted as an apprentice by the eye. Without causing the Anbu to flee, Sarutobi opened the scroll and read its contents. If the eye were to deliver any more devastating news to the village, there's a chance he might need the Anbu around. As he read the first portion of the message, Sarutobi went pale. "Danzo." His face started to flush a deep red as he realized in horror and rage what the eye had now found. His eyes moved down, reading the remainder of the message. Crushing the scroll in his hands, Sarutobi remarked icily, "That old warhawk has gone too far this time." The Anbu in front of him retreated a step at the sight of pure rage in his eyes. "Cat, with the exception of those serving in the village patrol teams, summon all the Anbu, Jonins and the special Chunins that are currently active at once. I want all of them gathered at the Great Hall within the next half an hour. We are going hunting. And burn out some troublesome roots." Even as Tenten fought against the powerful drugs that were injected into her body, the main emotion she was experiencing at the moment was terror. She was not your typical student. She was the daughter of Konoha's weapon and poison master, and she had learned how to combat sleeping drugs by burning them out of her body. A weaker Ninja Academy student would have long since passed out. Her chakra reserves were starting to run low, which was the only issue with her current predicament. She would soon run out of chakra and be completely unconscious from the drugs. As she lay helplessly in the tiny cell with 4 other unconscious children of various ages lying next to her, tears filled her eyes. The 4 were most likely street kids based on their soiled and ruffled appearances. It's likely that the person who abducted them targeted kids who were easy to overlook. Tenten cursed her stupidity in training on the academy grounds until she passed out for the 100th time. Her father's death meant that no one would be watching out for her, and it had made her an easy target for whoever had abducted her. Even though she was only 9 years old, her only relative, Aunt Yuri, had permitted her to remain in Konoha by herself in order to continue her studies at the Ninja Academy because her father had instilled in her a sense of responsibility and independence. Tenten realized with a sick feeling that she would have to do it alone if she was to get away from her captors, since no guardian had reported her disappearance to Anbu or the Konoha police. She had kept her eyes closed and her body motionless while she used her chakra to burn out the drugs. The guard outside the cell had seen her the first time she'd resisted the drugs and started to struggle in her bonds, and he'd given her a stronger dose. She would need to figure out a more covert way to escape the ropes that were securing her if she were able to counteract this stronger dosage in her system. When Tenten's life and health were on the line, she would never make the same mistake twice. She doubted that her kidnappers needed her and the other kids for anything positive, but she didn't know why. She tried to keep her leaden body motionless, fighting off the hazy sensation in her head. She would have burned out the drugs in a matter of minutes. She must then devise a strategy to leave this place. There was a dull thud outside the cell, followed by a choked gurgle. Tenten felt something sever her bonds as she was released, and then she heard metallic screeching as the rusty iron gates were opened. She opened her eyes in disbelief and saw a man with blonde hair staring into her deep blue eyes. Even as he cut through the ropes securing the street kid next to her, the man questioned urgently, "Can you move? We need to start moving before more ninjas arrived." Tenten forced her drugged and numbed body to move as she said, I can." Through a dry throat. She rose, swaying a little. "Good, I don't want to waste chakra creating a clone in case I have to fight," the man replied. He stooped to swiftly scoop up the 4 children, 2 in each arm, who were now untied. Then he stooped with Tenten at his back. "Climb on and hold tightly. I am getting all of you out of this hellhole." Tenten fought back tears of relief at being saved, but she forced her numb body to cooperate. Clinging to her savior's promise to get her out of this place, as only a child would, she somehow knew that everything would be okay soon. The man started to run out of the cell, down the winding corridors, with her safely strapped to his back. Tenten closed her eyes and clung to her life, believing she heard distant explosions and fighting coming from the numerous tunnels in her prison. On his first day as the Anbu's acting commander, he was already given a mountain of political garbage the size of the Hokage. As he stood in the hastily constructed command post near the western factory area, listening to the relays of the Anbu, Jonin, and special Chunin teams that had been gathered, assembled, and then sent into Konoha's catacombs all within 30 minutes, Shikaku had to stifle his groan at how troublesome everything was. The simple part had been to get the forces together quickly because the village was still on high alert. The challenging aspect had been devising a strategy to sneak into Root's headquarters, which, according to a scroll by the Eye, was purportedly buried deep within Konoha's catacombs. For the past few months, the upper circles of the Anbu have been buzzing about the Eye, a mysterious and potent infiltration agent. Shikaku, the Anbu's vice commander at the time, had known that the Eye was a renegade nin who appeared determined to assist the village by gathering information about miracles. The Hokage had given him the mission to look for any indication that the Eye had been hurt or killed following Madara's assault on the Uchiha clan. It had been assumed that the Eye had died because there was little information about the Eye's appearance or the number of people killed and injured within the clan compound. Shikaku quickly put the pieces together after the Hokage and village elders shocked everyone in the council meeting by revealing that Naruto had been promoted and that he had been trained by an enigmatic Jonin who had perished in Madara's attack. The Eye most likely taught Naruto Uzumaki. The Eye was also descended from the Wood Release, if that were true. The village elder's cock and bull story was most likely a political cover-up of some sort, given that the Hokage had been calling the Eye a rogue nin for the previous few months. The Eye had now risen from the grave, bearing a scroll containing details about Root and Danzo's schemes. And as soon as they got to the factory area, a scared street kid handed them another scroll from the Eye close to one of the catacomb entrances. Before stuttering out that someone had paid him a substantial amount of ryo to deliver the message, the street kid had gazed in fear and amazement at the gathered ninjas. A thorough description of the catacombs layout, including all of the walkways, was included in the second scroll. The Eye had laid out his strategy for obstruction and distraction, including the collapse of every catacomb exit save the one Shikaku's forces would use when the mission began. Shikaku had to presume that the enigmatic ninja had some way of knowing when the Konoha ninjas started barging into the catacombs because he had no way of getting in touch with the Eye. The Hokage had outlined the strategy to eliminate Root in a rare display of grim authority, leaving Shikaku to organize and lead the troops. Shikaku was obviously uneasy and a little amazed by the Hokage's well-thought-out plan, since he was the only person other than the Hokage who was aware of all the details contained in the scrolls the Eye had sent. In addition to using physical force to overthrow Root, the Hokage also intended to undermine Danzo's political influence. Over the communication radios, a voice said incredulously, Team 4 has located 5 children near one of the tunnels. 4 of them are heavily drugged. One of them is awake. She is Yeba Chike's daughter. The daughter, Tenton, is telling us that a blonde-haired young man had rescued them and set them near the tunnels minutes before our arrival. She was saying that the young man told her to stay put, and that help is coming before puffing into smoke. As Shikaku heard the transmission, he muttered, Shadow clone. The eye most likely possessed a strong chakra sensing ability because it had somehow identified Team 4 before they arrived at their current location and knew that they were friendly forces. Additionally, it was very likely that the eye was a visual chakra sensor, meaning it could see what he sensed. Shikaku mentally listed that skill to the eye. Knowing whether a ninja possesses chakra sensing abilities and what kind they are is always beneficial. If Shikaku ever had to face the eye in combat, it would be beneficial. Even as he turned the dial on another radio and spoke into the microphone attached to it, Shikaku ordered, Get the children back to the entrance at once. Team 4, scrub the assignment given to you. Team 7, there has been a change in plans. I need you to cover Team 4's location once you're done with your section. The stern voice of Team 7's leader replied, Understood, Commander. The ninja operating the radio set turned to Shikaku as another radio sounded. Sir, Team 9 is reporting that they are nearing the location of Root's seal room. Shikaku stopped, his gaze darting to the gloomy face of the Hokage who had been standing quietly by the command post ever since the operation began. The Hokage ordered Team 9 to consist of 10 members, including 1 Senju, and the 8 most powerful Anbu at the moment. A Uchiha Jonin and a Hyuga Jonin were the other 2. The only information the team was given about the room's contents was that Danzo and 3 Seal Masters were inside. Shikaku braced himself, understanding that the Hokage had chosen to include a Senju, a Uchiha, and a Hyuga on the team for a reason. When their clans find out about what was in the room, it would be fortunate for Danzo to escape this situation unscathed. The Hokage's icy voice abruptly spoke from the side, asked them to be prepared. Danzo most probably knows his precious root is already under attack. With a swift nod, the ninja operating the signal set spoke into the microphone. Shikaku, anticipating what would happen, said, Misato, dial up the radio for Team 9. The radio was filled with crunching metal sounds as the ninja who were in charge of the signals turned up the volume. The radio was filled with a loud explosion and profanity. There was an explosion seal on the door. It seems Danzo was prepared for our arrival. None are injured, we're going in. The radio was filled with shouts, screams, and the roaring of different ninja techniques. An angry scream followed by harsh breathings could be heard over the radio. Eyeballs. There are Sharingan eyeballs here. Sage's mercy. What is Danzo planning to do? Inori has gone berserk. Wutai. Restrain the Uchiha, he'll be killed in that state. Even as the radio echoed with cries of indignation, Shikaku closed his eyes. The Hokage merely listened stonily as the ninja operating the signal system looked shocked. After a long 10 minutes, the leader of Team 9's stern voice finally sounded on the radio. We've subdued Danzo and 2 of the Seal Masters, 1 is killed in battle. 7 men down in Team 9, 4 of them suffered from serious injuries. Danzo used some obscure seal that ripped off their arms and legs. We need the medic nins right away. Even as the ninja in charge of the radios communicated the information, Shikaku yelled, Team 5 and 2 are near the area, send them in at once. Once more, the Team 9 leader spoke tentatively over the radio, Commander. We found a tray full of Sharingan eyes in the room. We had to knock out Inori Uchiha when he saw them and gone berserk. Yu Hyuga was disturbed by the find. I am afraid she might have heavily damaged Danzo's organs during the fight. There was also a container filled with some kind of serum. None of the Seal Masters are talking and Danzo's unconscious. We need someone to identify what it is. Shikaku stated firmly, seal up the Sharingans and the serum. We'll need them as evidence before the council hearing. Team 5 and Team 2 are on the way. There are medic nins in the teams. Stabilize your injured and wait for their support. The 3 teams will merge and escort the prisoners back to the entrance once the injured are attended to. You'll have command. Understood, Commander. As Team 9 returned to radio silence, the ninja next to the radio said, Commander, Team 1 is patching through. Over the radio, Team 1's leader's shocked voice said, Commander, we've found a library deep within Root Base protected by powerful seals. We only managed to get in because part of the sealed walls had been blasted apart by some kind of powerful explosive. It is filled with scrolls with the emblem of the 4th Hokage. Nothing about that was mentioned in the eye's scroll, and Shikaku's eyes widened at the news. However, it would likely indicate that the eye had already discovered the location if someone had already cracked the seals guarding Root's library. And scrolls bearing the 4th Hokage's emblem. Shikaku massaged his head while closing his eyes. He was certain that once the news spread, Danzo and his root operatives would not make it through the night. Not when they are the ones who stole the 4th Hokage's knowledge and committed massive bloodline theft. Information that had been absent for years after the 4th Hokage's death and the unidentified ninjas who broke into his clan compound after his death. Shikaku. The Hokage's cool, collected voice cut through his thoughts. Shikaku was startled to see the Hokage's eyes blaze with rage as he looked up. Handle the operations here. Tell Team 1 to touch nothing in the library and stand guard. I am going in. After 12 hours, Hokage's tower with Homura right behind her, Kaharu entered the Hokage's chamber with her back straight and her eyes unwavering. As she approached Sarutobi, who was sitting behind his desk and was calmly staring up at her, she threw open the door without bothering to knock or acknowledge the Anbu standing guard at the doorway. Sarutobi, I just received news that you've called up most of the Jonins and the special Chunins for an unauthorized mission. Kaharu yelled. What's the meaning of this? She felt shivers down her spine as Sarutobi watched her. In that brief moment, Kaharu became aware that something had gone wrong because Sarutobi was now staring at her with disdain. He had never once given her that look in the many years she had worked next to him. Sarutobi yelled to the Anbu standing in his doorway, Wolf. Please close the door. With a nod, the Anbu closed the door. Then, as Kaharu watched in disbelief, Sarutobi's hands flashed through multiple hand seals, securing the room against any outside espionage attempts. Sarutobi got up, circled the table, and stalked in Kaharu's direction. Kaharu was startled to sense the deadly intent radiating from him. Homura looked at his former teammate in disbelief and exclaimed, Sarutobi, what's the meaning of this? The elderly man appeared to be planning to beat Kaharu. With a chilly smile directed at Kaharu and Homura, Sarutobi stated, it has been brought to my attention that Danzo had been operating Root secretly all these years. However, his tone was devoid of humor. But of course I needn't tell the two of you that since both of you already knew. Staring at Sarutobi, Kaharu erupted in fake bravado. Root was necessary for Konoha's survival. Even if you and Minato refused to acknowledge that. Sarutobi angrily yelled. Root's agents nearly caused a 4th shinobi war right after the 3rd war ended. Kaharu retreated in alarm. And their actions over the past few years will start a shinobi war if they are ever known to the world. Assassination of Water and Iron Country's ambassadors without council approval, starting a personal war in Rain Country. The list goes on. Kaharu looked at Sarutobi in disbelief, her eyes widening in alarm. How did you? Kaharu started to say something, but Sarutobi interrupted her by saying, as of this afternoon, Root is no more. Danzo is charged with treason of the highest level. Death by decapitation, for the stealing of Sharingan eyes, liaising with Orochimaru to formulate a serum of wood release genes, assembling his own personal army, conducting missions that threaten the stability of Konoha. We have Inoichi go through Danzo's mind. And you know what we discovered. As Sarutobi loomed over Kaharu, her breath caught, and Homura hurried forward to try to avert the impending altercation. Sarutobi, Kaharu and I were aware of Root's existence, but believe me when I say that we've no idea Danzo had gone so far. The original intention was for Root's agents to go on missions deemed too damaging or dangerous for Konoha ninjas to take on. Root's agents had been specially trained. Sarutobi spat out in disgust, to be the emotionless dolls of Danzo, to do as he commanded. I know that Homura, just as I know that Kaharu had been the financial backer for most of Root's operations that even you know nothing about. Just as I know that she had collaborated with Danzo to send agents on missions that could start a war between countries. Just as I know she and Danzo were the ones that concocted the plan to break into the Namikaze compound after Minato's death and strip the compound of all of Minato's knowledge. Knowledge which Konoha had thought for years were stolen by some enemy villages. At Sarutobi's charge, Homura staggered back, turning to face Kaharu, who was gawking at Sarutobi in disbelief. Kaharu, based on our past friendship, the contributions you've made to the village, and the village's secrets you had helped guard it over the years, I will spare you a traitor's death. Your involvement in this whole affair will be kept silent, same to you Homura. Sarutobi said with a firm voice. However, I can no longer trust you to make sound decisions for Konoha. You know what you should do, Kaharu. The two village elders stared at Sarutobi in disbelief, and there was a long silence. Sarutobi glared at them one last time before turning and dismissively waving at them as he walked back to his desk. You may go now. Homura started to say, Sarutobi, I want you to know that I never intended, but Sarutobi interrupted. Just go, Homura. There will be a council meeting this evening, and I need to prepare. You'll be told what was uncovered during last night's mission at the same time as the rest of the council members. Sarutobi said as he looked away from them. Homura turned and gave Kaharu a stern look as Sarutobi ignored them further, then stalked out of the room. Kaharu sagged in defeat, her feet leaden, her eyes watering, and then she followed. Even with all of her wealth and influence, Kaharu would not be able to avoid the reckoning that had already taken place. Near sunset, a second urgent council meeting was called for the second consecutive day. Members of the Jittery Council had assembled in the Hokage Tower, wondering what shocking revelation would be made next. Was Madara located? Was there another assault? The various clans that called Konoha home had taken notice of yesterday night's massive recall of Jonins and Chunins, and most, if not all, had been waiting for the other shoe to drop all day. A few clan leaders, whose ninjas had been drawn into the mission, were already somewhat aware of what had transpired, and their somber faces were not adding to the mood in the council room. N5 was listening in on the meeting outside the Hokage Tower's walls. Sika's mental replay of the meeting gave him the impression that he was standing in the meeting room undetected. The discovery of Root and Danzo's actions. The mind walk by Inoichi revealed that Danzo had arranged with Orochimaru to develop a serum of wood-release genes, which he planned to seal into a harvested arm, strengthening the arm so that it could support the implantation of Sharingan eyes, which he had also harvested. He was trying to develop the legendary Izanagi technique, following the legends of the Sage of the Six Paths. The Hokage's menacing voice announced the mornings the council room was filled with sounds of confusion and indignation, but the Hokage persisted in speaking in a voice that broke through the screams of fear and rage. The seal arrays needed to implant the wood release gene into the arm required the sacrifices of 5 lives. It appears Danzo and his agents had, in addition to their crimes, kidnapped 5 children off the streets of Konoha. The 4th Hokage's missing library had been found within Root's possession. It seemed that all these years, while we thought enemy ninjas were the ones that stole the knowledge of the 4th following his death, the real culprits were much closer to home. Following that, the Anbu had uncovered numerous mission scrolls containing Black Ops Danzo and his agents had conducted over the years. It appears Danzo had been conducting guerrilla warfare against other hidden villages without Konoha's knowledge. These missions might very well start a shinobi war if the public knows of them. As such, these missions will be sealed in Konoha's archives under the highest security level. 20. 3 Root trainees have been found as well, age range between 5.12. It is my decision to put them into a rehabilitating program so that they could live normal lives again. Upon my command as Hokage of Konoha, Danzo and his agents have been charged with treason of the highest level. They will be decapitated at the break of dawn tomorrow. I gather all of you now to inform and plan out what the public should be told. Soon after everything that had transpired was fully revealed, the council fell into a state of chaos that stunned even Danzo's supporters into silence. Even as his mind started to wander, N5 listened to the meeting. So Sika, what is boss planning to do with all the new scanned knowledge from scrolls left by our father? N5 inquired out of curiosity. The fact that the other clones had discovered the 4th's legacy within Root Base had come as a huge shock to Boss, a clone of the 4th Hokage's child. Not all the scrolls could be scanned, quite a number were sealed. However, those that S20 had scanned had increased our research and knowledge capacity. S5 said. With the new seal knowledge we've gained from the 4th scrolls, the research Sikas deduced that all our research projects are sped up by 30%. That's great news. I wonder what old man Hokage will be doing with all of father's scrolls. I hope that he passed them to boss. S20 never did manage to scan the 4th Hokage's signature Flying Thunder God technique. It might be hidden within some of the sealed scrolls. N5 thought about it carefully. It is highly doubtful that boss would be able to open those sealed scrolls. Scans by S20 showed that they are highly specialized security seals which need the blood of those keyed to the scrolls, and some other words spoken at the same time to unseal them. Failure to meet the requirements of the scrolls will result in the death of the one attempting to open the scrolls, and the destruction of the scrolls themselves. S5 disclosed. But at least if the scrolls are given to boss, we have a chance of finding a way to unseal them and learn what was contained within them, N5 said. Analysis of the 3rd Hokage's past actions. There's a 70% chance he might pass the newly recovered library of the 4th Hokage to boss due to boss's blood relations, S5 estimated. As he turned back to the council meeting in the Hokage Tower behind him, N5 remarked nostalgically, I hope so too. I know the clones and boss would like to have at least a piece of our father to remember him by. They might be the only memento we'll be able to retrieve in the years that had passed. As old mission records were pulled out and shown to the assembled council members, many expressed surprise and disbelief at what Danzo and Root had accomplished in the last few years. When the Uchiha clan found out that Danzo had stolen Sharingan eyes, they were especially out for blood. The head of the Hyuga clan had supported the Uchiha clan's demand that Danzo be submitted to their judgment in a rare display of solidarity. prior to being overturned by a majority vote of the other clan heads and council members, even the head of the Senju clan had voted in support of the demands of the Uchiha clan. The majority of those present had hoped that Danzo and Root would receive proper justice. In addition to betraying the Konoha clans, Danzo had betrayed Konoha itself. The decisions made by the village would serve as the basis for the verdict that Danzo and his Root agents would receive. It was all for the best in the end. The village council of Konoha would present a unified front and have a well-planned cover story ready to be presented to the public when Danzo and his agents were publicly executed tomorrow. Sarutobi had made the decision to postpone telling the Fire Lord the whole truth until tomorrow, even though it would be necessary. But for today, he had a promise that he had to keep. A promise that had been building for 8 years. He had long believed that he would never be able to keep this promise. Sarutobi left his office by silently leaping across rooftops while wearing dark stealth gear. When he signaled his identity, the few patrols he saw along the way turned away without a word. With one last leap, he was through an apartment window, standing in a well-lit room where young Naruto seemed to be stooping over a number of scrolls that were strewn all over the floor. Naruto exclaimed, "Old man Hokage," as he saw Sarutobi and hurried to his feet. "What are you doing here? It is late." Sarutobi smiled as he looked at the young boy who appeared to him to be Minato's second coming and said, "I have some news that I need to tell you." If one had thought to look, one could see the features. The fact that none of the villagers had ever connected the dots, viewing Naruto as merely the demon container, was somewhat of a blessing. Although it had protected Naruto's true identity, the child had suffered greatly as a result. Sarutobi had frequently wished he could have done more, but had been prevented from doing so by the village elders or council members. However, Sarutobi had found that he had more freedom to make decisions regarding Naruto now that his former teammates' influence had been undermined by their relationships with Danzo, which were only kept a secret due to Sarutobi's intervention. He was going to make the most of that freedom. For example, transferring Minato's legacy to Naruto. With his newfound political power over the village elders, Sarutobi was certain that they would never consent to it if he hadn't broken their hold on him. Sarutobi created the hand seals for the privacy technique, sealing the bedroom by closing the open window and pulling the curtains over it. Then, with a smile on his face, Sarutobi turned to face an eager Naruto and told him plainly, "Your teacher is still alive." Naruto appeared surprised for a moment, his mouth hanging open. "My teacher? Oh yeah, my teacher. That's great," grinned Naruto as he exclaimed with delight. Yes, with all that had already happened. I must say I have a degree of trust in him, even though he is not a Konoha ninja. I will not press you for information should he ever attempt to contact or meet up with you. Sarutobi replied with a serious face. However, should he contact you in the future, help me tell him that I would dearly love a face-to-face meeting with him. I have tried leaving a message for him at a location we've last agreed on, but I am afraid there's no response from him yet. Naruto enthusiastically nodded his head and said, "I will do that, but I am not sure if teacher will agree though. He is a very private person." Before bending down to Naruto, Sarutobi smiled and said, "I understand that. There's a second reason for my coming here. There's a new mission last night which your teacher was involved. Suffice it to say, at the end of the mission, we discovered a cache of valuable items that rightfully belong to you. Have you ever heard about the missing library of the 4th Hokage? I think so, it's in the textbook about Konoha's history. Enemy ninjas broke into the 4th Hokage's clan compound after his death and took away all of his valuable scrolls." Naruto nodded. Konoha never found who those enemy ninjas were. As Naruto's eyes grew wide, Sarutobi remarked, "Well, those scrolls had been found after last night's mission, and I believe you are the rightful heir to them." Sarutobi extracted a scroll and a tiny metal cube with an intricate web of seals from his pouch. Sarutobi showed Naruto the little metal cube and said, "The scrolls are all sealed inside this scroll. But the real legacy your father and mother had left for you is this. It was found together with the scrolls. Whoever had taken it knew that it was more than just a trinket, but I doubt they ever managed to understand what they truly have in their hands." "So what is it?" a bewildered Naruto inquired. "It looked like a metal cube to me." Sarutobi remarked, "To answer that, I will need a drop of your blood. Given Naruto's advanced age, do you think he would be uncomfortable with that?" With a simple shrug, Naruto bit one of his fingers, causing a tiny bead of blood to form. Sarutobi gave a nod. "Good, I need you to prepare yourself. Focus on the image of you opening a door. I need you to hold the mental image, as you smear your blood on the cube and said the words, 'Sanctuary,' are you ready?" Naruto nodded and declared, "I am ready." As the elder man placed a firm hand on Sarutobi's shoulder, he gave him a questioning glance. Sarutobi remarked, "Good, begin." Naruto had given him a puzzled expression before doing as he was told and smearing his blood on the cube. His expression was focused as he spoke. Sanctuary. They were surrounded by a roaring of energies, and the air itself shivered, and time itself broken.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.